Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hotline League. And it is a banger because once again, LCS has proved themselves the superior Western region, and we have advanced to the quarterfinals as the sole Western representative. That's what this episode's going to be all about. We're going to be taking your calls as we all agree that's exactly what happened. And boy, it's going to be a banger. All right, with me, as always, is Cubby. Cubby, how's it going?
I'm great. I'm wearing the shirt of the best team in the West off of results-based analysis, and you cannot argue with that, so it's fantastic. And I'm also very excited to be joined by our guests, so should be a good episode.
Yeah, it's good to get to chat as always with you. I know you and I will be doing our prediction show immediately after Hotline League, so people can stay tuned for that. But joining us is Ox, I think for the first time on the show. Am I correct?
Yep, this is the first time.
I've done so many, they all bleed together now. But good to have you on. You're joining us from Korea, yes?
Yes, I am. And, a little bit early compared to, because of Worlds, I've been up so late. So this is a bit early for me. So I'm a little bit, I'll get into it, as the show goes on. But this is the earliest I've woken up in like 2-3 weeks or something.
And
so
when you say it's early, can you let everybody know what time it is?
11 a.m. Which doesn't sound that early, but when we had the 3 best of 3 day, I stayed up to watch it and went to sleep at 6 a.m. So my sleep schedule is cooked. The season is over for me, and immediately I instantly hit degen mode. It's one of those things where, like, that voice in your head is like, you shouldn't play another game. You should go to sleep. You got work tomorrow. That voice is silent now, and I think I need it back. Because
are you just grinding solo queue, or like what's keeping you up to these degen hours besides Worlds?
A bit of everything, I've been playing a bit of solo queue. I've been playing, Supervive came to Asia yesterday. I was playing some Ravenswatch, some Age of Mythology Retold. I've been doing a lot of, the gaming that you want to do during the season, you're too busy. I've been catching up, so it's been fun.
No, I love that. That's why December every year is I just get to sit down and play. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna finally play Hades, and then I'll just grind out Hades for 2 weeks or something. So I love that feeling. Cubby, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to ask if I know that Aux is a gamer, but is there any shows or media that you enjoyed as well? Anything of that nature?
Oh, I've been watching Narcos, and I've been watching a lot of films recently.
Ooh.
I'm a big film watcher, but if you ask me what films I've watched at the top of my head, I will draw a blank. But I've been watching. I don't know. I've always been someone who just watches a lot of films, so I've got a fair few I've been watching there.
I am trying to find something to see in the theaters because I've got the AMC pass and they're just draining my bank account right now. So I need to go find something. And I don't want to see a scary movie, and I don't want to see a sad movie, so that limits me a little bit. But
I heard there's a good sad movie out right now.
Yeah, the robot movie.
I heard it's awesome.
Yes, I've heard it's really good. Yeah, Preco in the chat, the one of the co-creators of Arcane, says Wild Robot, and so there you go. You have your endorsement. They can quote that. Creator of Arcane says Wild Robot. So there's the endorsement for that poster. Either way, we have a lot of good stuff to talk about on the show. Besides the fact that episode 5 of Agatha All Along was very disappointing, and those things are the exciting Worlds adventures and action that have been happening over the last 4 days. 4 days. Yes, 4 days. It all bleeds together now, but I've been back in the States for almost a week, so I'm starting to get my feet underneath me. We're going to talk about that on the show in just a little bit, but first I do want to shout out our sponsors for this episode, NZXT, PrizePicks. PrizePicks, by the way, doing a giveaway right now. If you do ! Giveaway, you can win one of 100 different free lineups that are might allow you to win up to $1,000. So it's pretty cool. PrizePicks is doing that. And then joining us for Worlds is Pagoda. Really enjoying that. We'll have the Pagoda snack break later, and I'm looking forward to it because I am hungry. Anywho, speaking of hungry, I'm hungry for some takes. So, Cubby, do you want to explain how the show works?
Yeah, if you guys want to call in, talk to Travis, myself, and special guest Aux, you can. ! Discord in either chat or discord.gg/Travis if you want to join the channel. Drop your take at me, at Cubby. If it's good, I'll pull you into the waiting room, and then we'll drag you into the call. You can talk with us and go from there. So far, I only have 2 takes, so plenty of room for good takes. Of course, anything Worlds related. I know there's some off-season rumblings going on, Travis. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Some pretty big news dropped the day after G2 got eliminated that Jack and Mickey X were allowed to explore options. I know it's an EU take, but NA is rolling. I know JoJo tweeted out an airplane gift today. So yeah, it's some interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is some interesting stuff. I think it's okay. I think we are now at the point where it makes sense to maybe grab a couple off-season stuff. I mean, I still want to focus a lot on Worlds, but I think it's completely fine, especially because there's some big rumblings going on here. Especially if we can tie them back into LCS, I think that would be super swell. So we can talk about that. But yeah, I mean, other than that, Ox, what have you thought of Worlds so far?
It's been a lot of fun. I feel like we had a lot of banger matchups already. I feel like the Swiss stage, even though there's a lot of controversy about the teams who made it through, some of them, I feel like it always kind of delivers on the hype. I mean, we haven't had it for that long, but I definitely enjoyed watching some of the matchups. And the best of 3 days, just cinema. I think we've had some good ones.
Yeah, I really have enjoyed the format, and I know that I'm probably angering European audience when I say that, but I think it's anybody who suggests that the ideal scenarios to go back to groups is like wild to me, because I think this is way more interesting. The hype of the draw and all that stuff has been really fun. Quite frankly, and I guess we should probably hold off on it until we get a take, because I'm sure we'll get some sort of format take. There's a pro tip: if you are trying to get on the show and there's not a format take.
That was the first one I pulled, Travis.
The first one you pulled? Okay. Well, then I'll keep my opinions, but I have them. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, Cubby, how about you? What have you thought of Worlds so far?
I think it's been good. Like, it really felt like all the teams that were in the 2-2 pool were the ones that deserved to be there. And the final day for me was really enjoyable. It sucks that we got the team kill matchup. Like I said going into the tournament that I really felt like one Western team deserved to get out. And I really hate that it was G2 versus BOG, which was the hardest team left in that draw, and then the NA team kill. Because I think that if there were different matchups, like D Plus and Weibo were actually really beatable for the Western teams. And I would have appreciated seeing them earn their way in there and not have the draw be, questionable. But the draw is what it is. You have to beat the people in front of you. And I think the teams that made it the quarters are exciting. So yeah,
agree. It's been really enjoyable to see. Obviously, I'm sad about the Team Liquid FlyQuest matchup, because I think a lot of people are sad about it, especially North American fans. I think it would have been interesting to see what we could have done against some of the other regions, but we'll get into all that in just a bit. I actually, I think it might just be a good time to dive into it if we want to go straight in. I'm sure it's going to be a really busy episode with a lot of calls about Worlds and off-season stuff. So
let's do it.
Go do that. Yeah. While I do that, Ox, what's it like in Korea right now? Is it cold? Is it chilly?
It's pretty chill. We kind of just like a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, moved out of like the Korean summer, which I don't handle well. I'm from the north of England where it's rainy.
Oh yeah,
and rainy.
I don't handle the north of England well, so that's
and then it's not just hot, but it's so hot and humid during the Korean summer that I'm just like permanently a sweaty mess. And then now it's really nice though. It's like it's still like, for me it's still like t-shirt weather, but it's not like you're forced to wear a t-shirt and you're melting sort of weather.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, hey, thank you to Glimmerglen, Delmec, Akarn Liberated, Real Foxy 1, Hurt Rune, Frogman for 2 years, Zemelci with 42 months, and then over on Twitch, and no one over on YouTube yet. We'll see if YouTube steps up and competes with Twitch, but thank you to everybody for the subs. Our first caller of the night is here. Yami, where are you calling from?
I'm calling in from Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. What do you want to talk about?
I wanted to address some of the controversy that you guys were talking about with the format / like NA's path to getting into quarters. I think people have been dramatically overstating how fraudulent it was. Like, if you look at the teams who ended up making it to quarters, NA's path is not substantially different. HLE farmed Western teams plus 1 minor region. T1 also farmed minor regions and then BLG, which you can argue BLG wasn't a farm. I would say like T1, that's, you know, BLG's like a good team, but the other two teams were Pain and MDK, I believe. BLG just farmed EU for the most part. So NA beating, you know, losing to, NA beating like 2 Western teams and then losing to HLE in a 2-1 series doesn't actually end up feeling like substantially less real to me than some of the teams that have made it. And I'm not denigrating the past or like saying all of the past were equal. Like G2 obviously had a nightmare draw, and I can understand why people are upset about that. But I think it's kind of cope to claim like FlyQuest didn't earn the spot as much as plenty of other people who are currently in that position. And like my final kind of comment on that, I will say, is if EU fans wanted to have a quote unquote like easy final matchup that was just a civil war, which is what NA got, they should have sent better teams who could have made it to the 2-2 bracket.
Ox is already laughing. This is the first Hotline League caller. He's getting exposed to it right now. Just dunked into the deep end. Okay, so they should have sent better teams. I assume you're saying so that they, you know, like a Mad Lions or somebody would have been waiting at the end for G2.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ox, you were laughing. What do you make of this? Do you agree that it's not that bad of a format or as much of a draw, or do you disagree with this take?
You know, I think it's somewhere in the middle because I think there have been a lot of overreactions. I do think that the point about how HLE had an easy, like not too hard of a run is kind of valid, but also like the teams who go 3-2, you'd expect them to have like, I mean, I guess you'd expect like a harder team at the end. So the fact that you go 3-2, you're left at the end, and then like, you know, I feel like G2 was more indicative of what it could be. But I feel like more the issue for me is kind of like, because a lot of people, a take I've heard as well is that like, oh, well, you know, round 1 is all that matters, and then after that it's seeded normally. But I think the fact that like BLG ended up in that position was like a knock-on effect of the round 1 seeding. I think there's problems with the seeding, right? I think that people are overblowing it. I agree with FlyQuest. I also think that based on FlyQuest showing against HLE, like they looked pretty good in that series. And there are teams who also had pretty free routes in. But I think like the fact that we had T1 playing Top Esports and what was the other matchup? Weibo against GenG round 1. Like those, I mean, Weibo it's less of an issue, but like T1 getting knocked down, and then that caused BLG to get knocked down. And then it ends up in a situation where we have like a lot of teams you'd expect to have gotten through like at the end of round 5. And I think honestly, the main thing with me for the seeding is the fact that like if you look at the pools and with the restrictions on round 1, right, you can only draw a team from a different region. So GenG and Top Esports have to draw from pool 3, and they can't, and they're limited to 2 teams, you know, because I think that round 1 you should be able to draw from 3 teams minimum, but because pool 3 is only LCK and LPL, GenG can only play against LNG or Weibo, and Top Esports can only play against D plus Kia and T1. So it's actually better to be a third or fourth seed from LPL LCK, because then you have a chance to draw Fnatic or Team Liquid. Whereas on the other side, like Top Esports had a choice of T1 or D plus. And if you compare that to Weibo, who had a choice of GenG, Fnatic, or Team Liquid, I know which like choice you'd rather have in that situation. Which I just think like it doesn't make any sense to me that like it's actually worse for the second seeds, and that's reflected by the fact if you look at GenG's path to quarters, I think everyone agrees they had the hardest path by far.
Yes. I mean, I agree with that. The other change that I would make is I'm okay with facing your own region in round 1 because of no rematches later on in the tournament. So I would rather see LCK versus LCK in round 1 than in round 3, 4, or 5, if it matters more, frankly. So I don't like it. Does it suck to go at Worlds and, you know, your first match is against a familiar opponent? Yes. But does that mean that you don't get to team kill them later on? Absolutely. Like, so I would rather have that, quite frankly.
I agree with that, Cubby.
well.
I feel like it's so unlikely that the community would ever be okay with that, though. Because, like, if you remember, everybody freaked the fuck out last year whenever day 2 was a bunch of Civil Wars.
And day 2 made for a better tournament.
I know it did. And that's what I said at the time, and it was so frustrating because I was like, you guys don't understand. We're getting this all out of the way now. It's good. But everyone just whined and whined about it. And so the idea of, and I don't think there was any changes that were made to stop that from happening this year. We just got quote unquote lucky and didn't see it. But like I can't imagine that if people are okay with that and are frustrated about that in day 2, that they're going to be okay with it in day 1. Like one of my frustrations with a lot of format complaints are that fans, I think, frequently do not understand the constraints that like are placed into this, right? So fans don't want Civil Wars. They don't want rematches later. Then we also have a world where like we have 4 LPL, 4 LCK teams, only 2 LCS teams this time, 3 EU teams. You have to do some sort of seeding, and then you have to have it like play out where everybody just this kind of like crazy march through the Swiss, and then just avoid any matchups that people find that are like unfair or whatever. And it becomes incredibly hard once you end up with like, because you have all these different possibilities, but when you start putting on, okay, here's another restriction, okay, here's another restriction, okay, here's another restriction, and it just starts to like create a lot of awkward paths, right? Like it's very hard, I think. And Ox, I know you were kind of saying that you'd like to see some seating changes, and maybe it would be interesting to hear what those are, because from my perspective, it feels like it's very difficult to seed like a balanced Swiss format when we have such an unbalanced pool of teams, right? Where we have
I got it.
4 from these eastern regions that are way stronger, a smaller amount of teams from the western regions that are seemingly way worse in a lot of cases. What's up, Cubby?
I mean, if you're going to have this Amazon like global power ranking, just use it next year if it runs for a year. I mean, I think it's a little bit flawed right now, but it would at least give you a pretty decent barometer of where teams are at. And I know they're going to use it for potentially like adding 1 or 2 bonus teams at the end, like teams that miss but should be there and have a best of, is the rumor at the moment. Like, I mean, just use that for like to make pools, like worst comes to worst, like you can argue like, oh, like this team should be 6 instead of 7 or vice versa, but if it's in the same pool, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, as long as it's like a decent approximation, it's fine. But I think as well, in terms of like how the seeding should have been for this tournament, I think like Pool 1 should have been first and second seed from LPL and LCK. And there is precedent. Both these regions get 4th seeds because like we know they're stronger regions.
Yes.
And then Pool 2 is 3rd seed and 1st seed from LEC and LCS. And then Pool 3 is 4th seed and 2nd seed from LEC and LCS. And then that problem about the GenG top esports only having 2 choices in Pool 3 doesn't happen anymore. And I think round 1 would be likely a bit more one-sided. But to be honest, all the play-in teams lost their round 1 anyway. So we'd have like Hanwha, BLG, GenG top esports playing play-ins teams, and they would win. But that is the outcome we had anyway. It's just G2 esports and FLYQUEST were the ones who won. And I think that the Pool 2 versus Pool 3 would actually have some pretty good series, because I think it's a lot more realistic situation to match up like G2 against, some of these teams who are like 4th seed from potentially T1, 4th seed from Korea T1. I think that's like a realistic round 1 matchup that'd be interesting. I think the Pool 2 versus Pool 3 would be a lot more interesting then. And then, I think things would balance out better, because I think some of the matchups we had resulted in like round 2 having some rough matchups. And then it meant that like, BLG went to 1 too early, which meant they were still in the pool later on, which obviously meant G2 had to kind of face that minefield. But I think that's the thing I would change, which honestly, it isn't that big of a change. And I think next year they'll probably just use the ranking, which, solves all that. But I think that's how I would approach it this time and just tweaked it a bit. And then the knock-on effect of a better round 1, kind of as you said before, having like a better earlier round means your round 3 is a lot safer. And I think even if round 1 in some people's mind might be a bit more like, oh, the expected matchups, like it's a bit more boring, I think that's worth it. So when we get to the best of 3s, it's like really fun.
Yeah, a couple things. One, do we believe that will like? I just have a suspicion because I've seen so many format tweaks over the years that we will maybe we'll make those tweaks, and then like people will still get angry because we'll still have like a line that feels really bad for a team, or some team will have I'm not saying we shouldn't make that change. I just am sort of the opinion that like people will complain no matter what, because again it's like such an imbalanced lineup of teams. So I feel like we'll still have some strange thing that happens, because when you throw 16 teams in and you create a Swiss bracket like this and you have it feel so lopsided amongst all the different participant regions, then like you're going to have some strange stuff that will happen. And remember that next year, like we'll have like a Brazil team in for the LCS, for instance, or I mean for America's region or whatever. So like some more strange things will pop up. The other thing is that I suspect that the power ranking stuff will just be a lot of drama next year, where like their system will be, because it is difficult to power rank across all these different regions when they're not playing against each other much. The system is going to look probably better than it does now, because it will theoretically have more data, but that it will still be a thing where people will be like, what are you talking about? Like all these LCK, LPL teams should be at the top except for G2, who should be halfway in there, and then North America should be below everyone else. Like it's just going to be this weird situation. So I'm predicting it because I feel like I've done this long enough to know that like fans don't usually feel satisfied with any answer. Like it's funny to me that last year this format was a huge upgrade. People were angry on day 2 that civil wars were possible, and then this year they're like, actually this format's dog shit, blah blah blah. So I remain skeptical that things will be whatever. But I do, to get back to the caller's take, I do agree that this format, like the reactions to it are overblown. That I have this quote that Broken Blade said in an interview with me, which was, if you require luck in the early stage of Swiss, you're probably not going to make it far. And I am not pretending that like G2 did not get a rough draw, but I also feel like if G2 was as good as so many people feel, like they should have probably gotten their way into quarters. I don't know. It's hard for me, and I feel like I would say the same thing about FlyQuest if it was FlyQuest and G2 that were in swapped positions. Like I just like get good a little bit, like I don't feel like, I feel like G2, much like some of the other Western teams, had really great moments and really not great moments. And the fact that within 24 hours of their disqualification, they're looking to swap out 2 players on their roster indicates to me that like they also agreed that their team was lacking in certain areas. So I don't know.
I mean, the quiet part out loud with G2 is that it was before the tournament. So
yeah.
I will say, like, to kind of put a bow on this, I fully agree with Aux in the sense that having pools be better from the start makes the rest of Swiss better. And I think that the pools should be changed closer to how you have aligned it. Like, NA and EU should not have pool 1 seeds, for being honest. And part of the fun of Swiss is that you're going to get draws that are different. I'm okay with that. It sucks that G2 got the draw they did versus like FlyQuest getting the draw they did, right? And if I look at the tournament, I can look at G2 and make a case that, hey, they did perform better than FlyQuest. That's fine. But that's not the tournament, right? The tournament is you have to beat who's in front of you. And yeah, if you are G2, then regardless, like if you want to make it, you got to beat whoever's in front of you. And yes, the draws suck. Yes, the pools are a little bit different early on because that have affected G2 in a better way. Absolutely. But again, I feel like all of this is overblown, and I still really like this format. I really hope Swiss stays. They can change out the pools. And also the global power ranking system, it will get better. And I do feel like college football is a really good example. People will say, oh, but those teams play against each other a lot. Not really. You play in different conferences for the majority of the year than you meet in playoffs. And the teams change every single year. So it's actually a decent barometer for like how powerful things are. I think that as we move forward, the power ranking system will get better, and there is more there will be more international tournaments next year to at least try to make things better. It's just going to get tuned over time. And by the way, if it's not perfect or there's controversy, that's every conversation every Tuesday in college football when they release the rankings for the upcoming week, and that's fine. I'm okay with like people having controversy on all this. So yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
I
oh,
just
go ahead,
wanted
Ox.
I just want to quickly say on the G2 point is that G2, everyone saw the series. They could have beaten BLG. They fumbled that Baron. There was obviously the mistake from Hans Sama regarding the Rend, which, had the pause or whatever. That was completely a winnable series. And I feel like if G2 faced, like, with the form GenG was in, if GenG was the team they drew at the end for some reason, I'd be like, yeah, fair play. That's pretty rough. But, like, BLG did not look good in Swiss, and G2 could have won that. So I kind of agree with the take that, like, G2 should have just played better,
Yeah. I will say, do we have an EUNA take, Cubby? Or maybe this is a good chance to maybe address it?
Let's ask for one. Let's get one.
If anybody wants to talk about EU versus NA or anything about the format regarding that, I think that would also be good to go for. Yami, is anything you want to add to this before I hand you your shout-out opportunity?
Say that I agree. We could have, like, if there had been slight differences in seeding or how the draws are set up for the earlier stages, it would have probably resulted in a better, like, matchup for the final kind of best of threes. And, like, as someone who was very upset by the Civil Wars last year, kind of having the chance to see both sort of timelines play out now between this year and last year, like, I have changed my mind from last year. I would say, like, I think it is better just to, if we're likely to get Civil Wars, it would be better to just get them out of the way in round 2 where it doesn't really matter, or round 1 where it doesn't really matter. I also know that, like, I agree with Travis, there's probably no way that, like, the broader league community would look at a reasonable kind of seeding like that, see 2 Civil Wars and not freak out. But yeah, that would be the only thing I'd add.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a distinct group of people in the league community and among league personalities that are like, this tournament system isn't good until we have 15 we have 15 teams from LCK and LPL and G2, and then this tournament will be real. Anyway, anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I want to shout out my friend Happy Blue Guy, from who's watching World with me. We are both pretty late sleepers, so we groggily pull ourselves out of bed at 8 a.m. every day to watch the matches. So shout out to him for suffering through that with me. I also want to shout out the Summoner School Reddit, which is, like, as Split 3 is starting, a really great place to get information on how to play League of Legends if you are trying to get better. Yeah, those are my 2 shout outs. And of course, shout out to the sponsors for enabling this show.
Yeah, thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Speaking of sponsors, folks, I believe that it is time for the Pagoda Snack Break. Thank you so much to Pagoda for sponsoring Hotline League. Cubby, do you have your Pagoda egg roll available? I'm so sorry, Ox, that I can't fly one of these to Korea for you.
Do you, Travis?
Oh, man.
I do.
That's cold.
Yeah, well, actually, it's quite warm because I just got it out of the...
Well, I'm cold because I don't have it,
Yes,
I'm missing
exactly.
out.
It's a delicious... I'm sure it would be a delicious snack to have on a cold Korean morning. But, yeah, Cubby, which one are you eating right now? Are you still having the chicken?
Chicken. Yeah, I got chicken.
Nice. Well, I'm going to take my bite here in a second as I pull up my definitely not my talking points to make sure I don't forget anything. Okay, here we go. Ooh, it's very hot. Hotline League is brought to you by Pagoda Snacks. From crispy egg rolls to crunchy cream cheese wontons and savory crab rangoons, Pagoda Snacks is ready to crush your cravings. Shop for them in the freezer section at your local grocery store or get them delivered with Instacart. You got to put the egg rolls in because it's time for the Pagoda Snack Break. Pagoda chicken rolls have a crunchy wrapper, are made from white meat chicken, and are air fryer ready. So, speaking of air fryer, Kobe has an air fryer. And last week I had the chicken, but this week I'm having the pork. And they are very crispy. I really like how good they come out from the air fryer. How do you make yours, Cubby?
You got me mid-bite. Microwave.
You microwave, yeah, and it's still crispy, right? Pretty good. Yeah, so it's really cool to see Pagoda come in and sponsor Hotline League. As some of you may know, they were sponsoring the LCS through spring and summer split, and we were talking to them throughout that experience. Actually, I think it was in summer split that they came on board here, because I remember Mark doing his own live stream edition of this, and it's been awesome that they've been able to join up with us for Worlds. And yeah, it's been fun too.
They came in spring. I will say. I think they came in spring, like back half of spring.
Well, delicious egg rolls.
They are good. I have had these outside the stream. I have. They're tasty.
You can order them. Oh yeah, he had a Pagoda on. Numi's referencing when Raz was wearing the Pagoda robe. You can order these on Instacart, by the way, which is pretty neat. So if you want to get them delivered, I know some people don't like to go to their local grocery store. They like to do Instacart, but you can get them on Instacart. And there's a link if you do !Pagoda. Oh, look, I see FLYQUEST in the chat. That will bring you over to the Instacart site for Pagoda if you want to go check that out. So either way, thank you so much to Pagoda for sponsoring Hotline League. I will be muting while I eat the rest of these because I know some people don't like the... some people really like the crispy mouth ASMR, but not everybody does. So I'll be muting for those big bites that I'm about to take. But thank you so much to Pagoda for sponsoring the show. All right, Cubby, are you ready for the next caller?
I am. And we still have room for more takes, so if anyone wants to hop in, feel free.
504 Caesar sent a $9.99 super chat. It says, my daughter and I went to the store the other day, saw the Pagoda chicken ones, bought them, and they were really good. I eat mine with some Tabasco sauce. Nice. Thanks, 504 Caesar. It's cool to see that. All right. Twitch chat, you guys are crazy. Thank you to we got Frogman 2004, Zemelci for the 42 months. So many things for 69 months. Congratulations, so many things. I know it's a very big number for you. And then Spud Tugger, thanks for the 29 months. Poison Ivy, thank you for becoming a member or re-upping your member for 25 months over on the YouTube side. So thank you, YouTube stepping up. Let's see if YouTube can crush Twitch tonight. It happens every now and then. We got our next caller here. Their caller is Rekh. Rekh, where are you calling from?
I am also calling in from Washington, D.C., so shouts to Yami.
Wow, the nation's capital is just popping off tonight. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take, I'll give you my argument for it and then address the counter arguments as they appear to me. My take is that this T1 roster, the ZOFGK roster, is positioned to establish themselves as the greatest league roster of all time. So the reason for this, I mean, I think the most obvious part is kind of their record, which is pretty unprecedented in terms of its consistency. They're reigning world champs. They were the runner-ups the year before that. They got 2 third places at MSI. They got a 2nd place. They had an undefeated LCK. They've got kind of all the accolades you could hope for, right? They also had last year at Worlds a pretty dominant run at that tournament. They dropped, I think, 2 games throughout the whole tournament, 1 game in Swiss, 1 game to JDG. And part of that tournament was them reshaping the meta so that they could then dominate it, right? I think the most obvious counter arguments to me is that, one, that this is too results based, or the other option would be that it kind of ignores some of their less than stellar results, right? Too results based, you could say that maybe they have won these titles. Yeah, they've got good placements, but there were other teams that peaked higher or were more dominant in their wins. But I don't think that is a great argument because I think gameplay has changed so much over the years that it's hard to compare a team like, say, Samsung White 2014 to T1 2023. The other argument would be that, look, yeah, they've won these titles, they've gotten these placements, but they also get dog walked by GenG on like a yearly basis. And so that's a real dent in their legacy. But I think that getting 2nd place in the LCK isn't something that you should look down on, and that should still count for something. That's something that lots of teams would love to achieve and that they really struggle to or don't achieve that, right? So those are the main things that I could think of. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. I mean, I'm not a paid analyst, so I'd love to hear your responses to that.
Well, I think it makes sense to go to our expert on the topic, Cubby. Cubby, what do you think of this LCK team? Do you think that they are the greatest league team of all time, greatest league roster?
I mean, my gut says no, just because they haven't won enough domestically. even if I will say, like, the superpower of this roster is that they do always show up internationally. We were saying this before we even started the tournament, right? Like there is really no international tournament that this iteration of T1 has shown up for where they have disappointed or underperformed. Unless you call second a disappointment, which for a team of this caliber, I mean, I guess somewhat fair, but I don't think they were ever like the favorites coming in. It was always like, oh yeah, T1 like can win. I mean, I think the 1 year where they were the favorites might have been the DRX year, but even then going into the tournament, I don't think they were the favorites, right? So, but in terms of like greatest rosters of all time, I mean, I'd really have to dig deep. My gut says no, but I don't know who I would name as the greatest roster of all time.
That's why I'm kind of okay with the idea that it's these guys.
Really?
Because I just don't know, like, and maybe this is recency bias, but I don't know who pops up. Like, but for one of the big things, right, is that teams often don't stick together with the same roster. So in my mind, for it to be the greatest roster of all time, it has to have been the five same players, and then you look at all the achievements that those 5 players did together. And like, there's so many times where like a team will win Worlds and then immediately make roster changes right afterwards and send one of their players over to Team Liquid for some reason. So
I'm thinking of like the Marin roster, right? Because like at least they kept the core for a while and they won, but they always changed top laners. Because for me, that was probably the best run of all time with the Bang Wolf T1, right?
Yeah, I guess you have to like stretch outside my definition, is like I guess I would say, but
right. I don't know.
Because that's what the thing is. I like the idea of giving it to a team that stays together, because I do think that it is so easy for teams to just like swap a player, that like hard committing to 5 players over a longer period of time, and like in our sport, 2.5 years is apparently like an eternity. I think that is like very notable, and I think that deserves this level of acclaim, right, of greatest roster or whatever. But
I'm gonna tag an Aux.
I think, going on the point of the roster staying together, it's even more of a rare thing when the roster's had struggles. Like, I feel like sometimes we see teams, if a team has a dominant year, they might be more inclined to keep together. But this T1 has had their ups and downs and still kind of stuck strong. And I think it's hard to judge, because there's definitely like the longevity of the roster is something that other teams don't have. I do think that even though they've had some good placements domestically, they have missed out on a lot of titles. GenG had this long legacy of just winning constantly, and even internationally, like some of their achievements, like I feel like for a LCK team, like 3rd place at MSI isn't that really impressive, for like the most recent MSI that we had. I don't think it's
2003.
Like, yeah, I feel like
GenG both times.
I feel like the MSI placements on that, like, considering, I mean, obviously G2 can play upset, but typically what we've seen is that top 4 at these tournaments is just being top 4, like top 2 from LCK and top 2 from LPL. And I don't know, I'm not convinced. I feel like as well, it would be a lot easier if we'd had a situation like JDG had finished the Worlds run last year. I think a lot of people would have gone with them. But I think like 2015 SKT was pretty crazy. I think like the OG SKT 2015, 2016, well, not OG because that's 2013, but like those runs were just kind of absolutely crazy. 2015 as well, not dropping a game until the finals, I believe, where they dropped one game. They were 2-0 up and they dropped a game, which is just kind of insane. And even though obviously T1 didn't drop many games last year, I still think I guess that's one thing as well that you can bring up. It's like, it's a different time where like nowadays it feels a lot more competitive between the LPL and LCK, whereas back then it was kind of just the LCK, and there's more seeds. So maybe it's harder to have a low game win sort of Worlds. But also Weibo were incredibly fraudulent last year. So it was kind of a free finals, but they did beat JDG. I'm not saying like, I'm not saying they absolutely deserved the finals win, but like,
that was true finals.
I think that's one thing with like Worlds and stuff, is that, placements generally, like I'd say for the last few years, I mean, just generally ever, like first team at Worlds, you're pretty confident they're the best team. But a lot of time, the second team, like the finalist, isn't necessarily the best team. There's a lot of years that isn't true, and a lot of times, even like it doesn't sort them from 1 to 8 that well. So I think like going purely off achievements and be like, oh, this team got here, this team got here. Like I don't think it always indicates that this team was like the second best. But I think T1 has performed pretty well consistently and has always been a contender, and for such a long period and keeping the same roster, that is rare. But I personally wouldn't call them the best roster of all time.
Okay. So could they earn it this Worlds? In either of your minds?
No. I mean,
even if they won Worlds this year, you wouldn't give it to them.
I mean, it's so funny because like how many rosters have stuck together for 3 years in League? Like it's so unheard of. So it's almost like by longevity you have to default. But I'm looking at their tournament results right now. They haven't won a split of LCK since the first split they played as a 5-man in 22 spring. It was second in 22 summer, seconds in 23, and then second and third in 24. Now, of course, they took second, first at those 2 Worlds, and they took 2/3 at MSI. They did win EWC, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you'd have to make the kind of the argument that Aux is making with the world stage just being so much more competitive and that being impressive. But I mean, every single split of LCK, these guys have just gotten baptized by GenG along the way. Like, I have a hard time giving them the best roster of all time when they just get crapped on by Chovy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine giving it to them based off of like a point system, right? Where if you're like, yeah, maybe winning gets you 3 points and getting second only gets you 1, but like when you collect all these points from all these different events that you're placing in the top 3 of, like, you end up coming out on top. And I mean, again, like, if they win Worlds this year, and I'm not saying that they're favored by any means, but like if they pulled it off, I would have such a hard time saying that they aren't.
It would be ridiculous. It would be ridiculously impressive if they back-to-back.
I think I'd give it to them because they would be the only roster to win like Worlds twice. I know, obviously, like 2015, 2016, like it's very similar. As you said, I think that's completely fair. But like exact same roster and back-to-back, I think at that point I'd say I'd at least accept like an argument for it. But I think I'd probably say if they won Worlds this year, then I think they got it in the bag.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Rekh?
Yeah, I think I really agree with what Aux mentioned, kind of grading on a curve in a rough sense for the LCK, because just saying that it's not as impressive for an LCK team to get third as it is EU or NA, for example. I think for me, the consistency really is key, right? Where we talk about reasons rosters don't stay together. Obviously, a lot of that is general managers looking for better players, looking for upgrades. But a lot of times that's also just because they drop off, or one player doesn't seem to be performing well, or they start becoming more inconsistent. And or
they lose faith in each other. Like many roster moves are because one player or multiple players like, I don't want to play with that guy anymore. And so,
see, Travis, that's the West. That never happens anywhere else, right? Never, ever.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Only Western players. Yeah,
I forgot that's the Reddit narrative. My bad.
Yeah.
But that's really why I wanted to try and say, like they're in a position to establish it, kind of dependent on their placement at this tournament, right? I think I'm with Travis and Aux, I guess, on this. I think if they win Worlds again, or for me, honestly, even if they make finals again, that's 3 back-to-back finals with the same 5 guys. That's like a crazy level of consistency that we haven't really seen before. And obviously, if they win, I mean, I think it's them.
It would be ridiculous if they made finals. Like, thinking of all the tournaments they have been in, it was thirds at MSI, and I know BOG won one of them, but you would have this record where between LCK and Worlds, they would have only missed 1 final, which was this year in LCK, and then if they win Worlds afterwards, like, that would kind of put it to bed. I just think that they're really benefiting off the fact that how many rosters stick together for 3 years, right? And the peaks of this team just were not the same as other T1 teams, which, I mean, again, Aux and I instantly went to Season 5, Season 6 T1.
Right.
And even Season 7, where, like, did they get baptized in finals? Yes, but were they still in finals? Yes. So, my head goes there for, like, the Bang Wolf Faker iteration, where I feel like they at least have a 3-year run, and they had better finishes in that run, even if by the end you knew it was over.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out what happens. Maybe we can have this conversation after Faker lifts his bajillionth trophy. By the way, so I think if we don't count the first Worlds because LCK couldn't play there, then this is the 13th Worlds, right? And if they made it to a third in a row, then that would mean that they would have gone to like something like 20+% of World Finals. Am I correct in my math here? I think it's something like that. Either way, I think it's fair if they make it to finals, even if they don't win. All right. Thanks so much, Rekh. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I'll shout out Pagoda egg rolls, my favorite snack product, which I have absolutely consumed and spent money on and enjoyed. That's great. Love those guys. Also, I just want to shout out Masu. It's been really exciting following him this year as like an incoming NA talent, incoming rookie, really compelling personal story. I really am looking forward to seeing him play this weekend, even if it's a really rough matchup. I hope he does well, and I hope he continues to do well.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
You've really trained these guests well with the shouts.
I mean, it's been 300+ episodes, but yeah, they. To be fair, they were shouting out sponsors within the first 100, I think. So it's but they've been great. They're the best part of the show. All right, Cubby, who is I think the second best part of the show. Do you want to go grab the next caller?
Thank you, Travis. Yes, I got you.
Thank you to Park Mom for the 5 months. My biggest hater and Ari subbing to make sure that he can look at the VODs and just continue to seethe over me. Hayata, thank you for the Prime. I'm Hey, thanks for the Prime. Aerohydrus for the Prime. Big Angry Hobo, thank you for the 76 months. Really appreciate it. Over on YouTube, we have Zilch. It's okay, YouTube. I still love you. Wokka is here. Wokka, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Long Beach, California.
Long Beach, California, not too far away from me. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I want to talk about how this TL roster needs to stay as this 5 to see more progression with the mid jungle placement. I think that Umpty and APA, right, had pretty okay form in Worlds, and I think as this roster, as this top mid jungle, I think if they stay as this roster, their highs will get way better over next year. And I think the narrative of like get these guys out, get MTAPA out, right? Even though they went on a flawless season in summer and they looked really good the whole summer, and then on World Swiss they just got a little bit unlucky and their mental boomed. I feel like if they push with this roster again, they will have higher highs going into MSI, going into Worlds, and we may see them do way significantly better than right now.
All right, I think you're letting them a little off the hook by saying, "Oh, they just got a little unlucky." You know, I know you said mental boomed, but like you're making it sound as though, you know, the Team Liquid is not at fault for what happened just now at Worlds, and I think that. Like we saw an incredible. I will always wonder what happened to this team, and I think I could go back and find maybe even like
I
a
know
month
what happened,
ago.
Travis.
Minions.
Patch 14-18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say I think I could go back and find a month or maybe 6 weeks ago where I was half joking, saying like, and they're our first seed, so they're going to go over there and play completely worse than we expect them to, because that's just what happens every time we have a super hyped first seed. But yeah, okay, you think it was a patch that collapsed them coming?
Yes. I think it was the patch, and I think it was teams all drilling lane swaps. And even with drilling lane swaps, I will say I still think that TL and NA's approach to lane swaps has been the best in the tournament. I really believe that you should play lane swaps starting in 3 lanes. I don't get why teams are signing up to play 2-2 and split map like that. The way that I feel
like
like
a rant that is not related to Team Liquid's performance and roster changes.
It kind of is. But like I do feel like they had edge. I think that a lot of people are just like, you know, oh my god, like APA didn't play Yone. Like, why is this the case at Worlds? Guys, there wasn't ever a planet where APA was going to play Yone at this Worlds. I will also point to TL and APA beat Yone for the vast majority of the split in NA. I know it's NA, but their entire strat was that they would play Corki Trist, they would get grub advantage, and then they would go rotate and overload into the Yone, where Yone couldn't clear the waves and take the turret of the Yone and just snowball the game faster by that, because there wasn't a wave clear mid. Now, Yone got to the point where they couldn't give it away because it was too strong, because people figured out like the Bork Stridebreaker build, and I don't think they could slow it down to the same degree. And Corki and Trist were nerfed, which were the core champions that APA and TL were playing for the vast majority of spring. And if you look at APA's pool, like, yes, I do feel like the hits on his pool are deserved. He's not a good Orianna player. He wasn't going to play Yone. They admitted that they weren't an Aurora team. So those were three of the best mids on the patch that TL just were not going to be able to play. The mids they did play, Trist, Nico, Syndra, and I don't exactly know what else, but they weren't. I don't feel like his pool was as strong as other teams, but I really feel like TL and their style, they actually abused teams that were picking melee mids because they were like able to snowball into it, right? Now I really feel like TL, like, they just ended up not really finding their footing as a team. And I know I tweeted out at some point that TL and FlyQuest, I feel like both because of their team player like strengths or deficiencies, whatever, they both indexed into opposite sides of the game. TL just went full balls to the wall early game, and we're going to play like to get tempo and never let it go. Whereas FlyQuest played to pretty much drop everything early, bend, not break, and get to the point where if they get to late game fights, it's okay to be down 2 or 3k gold. And I think that in this tournament, in this meta, it was way better to be FlyQuest's approach. But that was never, ever, ever, ever the way that TL played the game. And so I feel like it ended up just being a really bad patch for them, and they did not adapt appropriately. And it did end up hurting TL a lot. In terms of whether or not I would run this back, my gut tells me they don't run it back as 5, but there's no way that they don't run it back as 3 or 4 or more. I think
you're saying your gut tells you, but like, what do you think?
I'm okay running it back. I feel like that there are actually upgrades that you could make to jungle, especially just given that you're an NA team.
Yeah, there's a poll up in chat, by the way, folks, on who you replace, both over on YouTube and on Twitch.
I don't know, though. Like, I don't think you have to do it as TL if they feel like they can run it back. And I don't think that there are upgrades to be made mid, even if like fans might point towards APA being an issue. I mean, like, how many players can you grab from NA that like would be better than APA mid? And for everyone saying JoJo, ever since APA joined the league, JoJo hasn't made it to an international tournament, and a lot of that's because of APA. So, anyway.
Well, I have a poll up over on YouTube and on Twitch. YouTube, unfortunately, you can only have 4 options, so I did not include Jan because I feel like he's the person who's been getting the least amount of flack. What is interesting is impact is incredibly low in both of these polls. I thought he'd be higher since he got so much flack, but impact is at 3% over on YouTube. He's at 12% over on Twitch. Umpty overwhelmingly high in both, with APA pretty close. So Twitch has him at 48%, and then APA at 40%, impact behind. YouTube has Umpty at 65%, APA at 27%, and then Core and Impact both at 5%, which is kind of funny to see. So, yeah, I would be worried if I was in Umpty, or I was in Umpty's shoes right now. Like, it's the I'm in danger meme, I guess, because I don't feel like Team Liquid is a team that is usually a big fan of keeping players around, and they did it a little bit this year, which was nice to see, but I don't know. Ox, what is your assessment as the neutral outsider on all of this?
I don't feel like I have a really strong opinion. I haven't followed the LCS super closely this year. I will say on Cubby's point about meta shifts, I think it's super brutal when you have so many changes coming into Worlds, and it can really be such a toss-up whether those changes suit you or not. And I think like you have teams who are pretty resistant to meta shifts, who can kind of make whatever work to a reasonable degree. Like I'd say GenG, I don't think there was any meta that was really going to shake them that hard. But like, you know, you can have a team like BLG, and a lot of people thought the meta should be good for BLG. But like, let's say a team like BLG had a bad meta, they're still, I mean, obviously BLG did make it out, but even like a team like that are gonna make it out of Swiss. But I feel like if you're, like G2 had a bad draw, they didn't make it out. Team Liquid, if it's a bad meta, don't make it out. Like the margin for error is so slim, and you have like so little time to adjust. I feel a lot of people talk about like picking up champions quickly, but I think especially because so many of the Asian teams have such strong mid laners, I feel like bringing picks into your pool and being able to play them to the degree where you don't just get dog walked in lane is like really difficult. I think people always like, I don't know, people talk about meta a lot, but I feel like teams still kind of underestimate like how big of a change we have sometimes. And like if you actually look at 14-18 patch, everything got nerfed. Everything that teams were playing for all of summer just got like nerfed in the ground, apart from Yone, apparently.
It was
but
14 out of 15 of the highest presence champs got nerfed. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that favors you, and sometimes that doesn't. And I didn't watch enough of the LCS to comment on like, I mean, I'm trusting Cubby's judgment on that not favoring Team Liquid and them not having a good meta read after that. But like, it can just completely kill a team's momentum. And if you have, if you're a strong seed from a Korean team, I think a good example is T1 last year, right? T1, the meta didn't feel that good for them at Worlds last year. And then they did some problem solving. They had some time and they went, hey, we can just play this stuff. It's still good. But the thing is, because they were a strong seed from an Eastern region, it feels like they have more time because they're at a much lower chance to get. They have to underperform quite hard to get knocked out in Swiss stage. They have a lot more time to problem solve. And I think that just isn't the case. Like a single loss in Swiss can really hurt chances for like a Western team. I don't think that was true specifically for Team Liquid, but that sort of pressure is a lot more apparent when it's like, oh no, we lost, a close game here. Now we might not make it out. So I think meta definitely can have such a big impact.
I have three things here. One, Slint Pint in YouTube chat says every single EU fan should rightfully unsub from Travis. This man is actively hostile to anyone who doesn't circle jerk NA. So if you are an EU fan, you better unsub to me because I'm hostile to you apparently for not circle jerking NA. I'm very confused.
We didn't call the format dog shit, Travis. And they read your tweet about it involving
Dude,
Swiss.
I was so confused. Like last year, I was skeptical on this format with Mark. I'm like, we need more time. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? This year, everyone's shitting on the format. And now I'm not. I'm like, maybe it's not as bad. Like I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's the reason that G2 lost, All right, anyway, so besides everyone from EU needing to unsub for me right now, two, I want to point out that it is like really disappointing to see how many people are like get APA out of Team Liquid when this guy has had barely a year a little bit over a year.
It's a year and a half.
Yeah. Less than that. I mean, he came in at the end of summer, right? Like he showed up at the end of summer and then played with them at Worlds. Then he had this year. Like, I think it's really disappointing when you are like a fan of a team and you have a really exciting player who's essentially a rookie, has like a really, I think, great year, underperforms at Worlds, and then you're like, fucking get him out of here. Bring in Jojo Pyun. Like, it's just crazy to me that that's the take and the response from people, and I think it's really disappointing to see.
I mean, this was their response last year, and what happened? Like, TL had an unreal domestic split, and up until this tournament were the best hope that NA's had in a long time. And the other best hope is the team that they lost to, which is FLYQUEST, and FLYQUEST wouldn't be where they are at without competing against TL for the entire split. So I think it's really gross for anyone being like,
Space Iwu Cowboy over on YouTube says APA is just not that guy. Sorry, no hands or champions. Like, he's had 1 year. Like, it's just so crazy to me. Like, look, if at the end of next year he shows no sign of progress, then sure. But the dude was first all pro in summer. Like, it's just berserk to me. And I think it's just I imagine it comes most frequently from hardcore Team Liquid fans, because hardcore Team Liquid fans have been trained by this organization that like, we're just gonna fucking, somebody doesn't perform and they're not core JJ, like we're replacing them. Let's go see who's coming up in the LCK system because we got to bring him over here. And so I think it's kind of a bummer. The last thing I'll say is like, oh, go ahead.
I will say that there are a lot of people that are like, replace APA with a Korean. Romer was literally their NACL mid, and he was a very talented individual, and TL did not make the call to play Romer at all. And that is a team that could have swapped to speaking Korean and comms if they needed to with Romer. It was also like learning English. So that was already a thing. Like for anyone that actually cares about it. And APA, to his credit, also gave Romer a ton of credit as they helped each other prep. And that was definitely something that was like really big for APA. So I don't get that either, because that already existed.
Bax in the chat says first All-Pro in NA though. LOL. Guess what? It's an NA team, and I know next year it's going to be America's. But like sometimes you are forced to run the best player in a role in North America.
That person was on Twitter, absolutely just typing that G2 should have made it in Swiss over FlyQuest for sure. You know it.
It's so crazy to me that it's like, oh yeah, but he's only the best in North America in his role. It's like it's a North American team. I'm sorry. Now that Travis, you're gonna have to settle for the best in North America for your roster.
Why can we only have 2 import slots, Travis? Why? Why can't we just free it up? Why can't we buy Faker?
The 2021
TL Showmaker now
owner, LCS team owner sentiment. The last thing I'll say, because I've been working the way through all these, is that I know you say it's the patch, Cubby, and I do think that there's a good chance that was part of it, but I also do feel like the team's decision making just boomed. Like it was so weird where I felt like in games they would make decisions that they wouldn't make. They'd end up in weird fights. Like they had some that were pretty good, some games where it looked like they were good, but like I do legitimately feel like they played worse in that FlyQuest series than they did in the FlyQuest finals that they went up against, and the pain stuff.
They were playing worse. They were playing worse for the tournament. I still think that a lot of the edge they had was that APA was legitimately better at some of the marksman mids than a lot of the other NA mids. And I think that if it were still marksman mid meta, it would have suited APA a lot more than other teams. I mean, it's so tough. This is a different, if anyone were to bring up Damwon, I would kind of bring this up. I'm going to do what, it's been called the weave, Travis. It's been going around socials a lot. I think that a lot of people are quick to be harsh on younger players. Lucid and Moham got a lot of crap for their loss against Damwon. And I think especially in those two roles, you are going to look bad if you are a rookie and you make a bad decision playing roles where you have less econ. Support's getting caught. It happens all the time. I went back through the series with Weibo, and Moham, for me, did not have nearly as bad of a series as was exaggerated. It was just a bad game 3. I thought that Moham's Renata was actually incredibly clutch as to why Damwon actually took a game in that series, or DK. I just keep saying Damwon. I know they're D+ now. But we need to have some more patience with these young players, especially ones in roles where it takes so much knowledge to be good. If you look at mid lane, this meta that we have, some of the mid laners in this tournament have been playing these matchups for 10+ years at the highest level. And for APA to come in after 1 year and maybe not be able to play the Orianna Syndra matchup as well as other people, or only be able to play the Syndra side of this, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes these guys just need more time. And I mean, I've been critical of APA's landing in the past. I was always a JoJo believer, right? I somewhat discounted APA on his way up, but he always beat me with hard work. I've been following APA since before Maryville. It does take him a bit longer to pick up champions than other players. That's okay. That's something that TL was able to work with for the entire domestic split. Going to this tournament and not being able to do it, I don't think it's the end of the world. He has another offseason to pick up stuff. The past offseason, he picked up an Ahri that was really good. He's always been able to add champs and work to actually, continue to improve himself as a player. I want to give him more time. And keep in mind that you are in the same position as a fan if you're calling for his head as you were last year calling for APA and Yon's head on this team. And look at how much those guys grew in this year. Look at where Yon's at now. I mean, everyone's looking at this guy like he is one of the best marksmen in NA. And the other guy who is another rookie who had an insane year. So I really don't get the calling for the heads of these players off of this one tournament where TL, for me, about performed to expectation. They looked worse. It could have been worse with a bad draw. Didn't play as good as they did in LCS, but If you told me that they lost in 2-2 round, am I shocked going into the tournament? Absolutely not. This is about like where we had them, right? It was a hope to get to quarters. So I don't get it.
You know, I feel pretty heated about the point you raised about not giving rookies enough time.
Yes.
I especially the Moham situation. Like, there is people who are like, oh yeah, we should have subbed Kellen back in. I'm like, Kellen has been slubbing it on this D+ roster for such a long time. He griefed last Worlds. And Moham, like, he hasn't even had a full year. He was subbed in super late in summer. And I guarantee it's the same people who are, like, praising his rel and stuff right now, like, oh, we should have got rid of him. And the other thing I feel super passionately about, right, is I despise any player who softens pro games to try and not look bad, right? And I've seen it before. I've seen players who just, like, they don't actively play, and they just let the game end rather than, like, actively engage in the game and try and win. And I'm like, if I see a Nautilus support end a game like 1-0-4, you're inting. If they lose and that's your KDA, you're inting. You should be 1-9. You should be trying to find the engages. That's how you should play. And especially in this meta, like if Moham's playing Rel and he sits back and it's like, oh, I don't want to engage because we're behind. It's like, no, you send it. Like what do you have to lose at this point? You should always go for the highest percentage play. So I think twofold, your point about the fact that like if you're playing support in a meta like this, you should be leading the charge, and if you're behind, you're gonna look bad. It's gonna look rough because you have to try and find a miracle from nothing rather than let the game end. And the other one, so many times people like eject a rookie quickly. I saw this in EU like historically so many times when I was covering like E Masters. You'd see these great ERL players that come up, that'd be in the LEC for like 2-3 weeks. Oh, it's not immediately working. Sub them out, and that was before we had the format change.
Yeah,
give
that
them
was
time.
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous, and it's like the pass as well that some of these veteran players get because they're like, you know, names have been around for a while. Like we had in what's it called in the LCS DRX, we had Rascal in the top lane, who's obviously like a storied name. He's had a high peak in the past. I think I didn't watch every major region, every single game. I would be confident to say Rascal might have been the worst player in a major region. He was so bad. He actually he didn't win a single game for like the longest time in the split until that final series. Like they subbed him out. And then but other than that, like he hadn't won not a single series, a single game. He was so bad, but because he's like a veteran, you know, they just keep him in the roster. And they obviously did sub him out because he was that bad. But like I don't know, man. I just find it so insane that like you have these players who have had such long careers, and they're just you tell they're not in the game, and they'll be kept on a roster. And then you have a rookie who's been playing for like 3 weeks, and they're like, you know what? It's not working out. You're gone. Give me some time.
Yeah. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. And I definitely feel like that's what's going on with the APA stuff. So we didn't even really talk about Umpty that much. I think that there's a separate conversation to have there. Like I do think
we have another call about him coming up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, Wokka, anything that you want to quickly respond to anything here, or do you feel like we covered it for you?
Covered it, man. Cubby, you're the GOAT. Thank you.
Anything you want to shout out?
I have Pagoda in my fridge right now, actually.
Not the freezer?
I did. Yeah, I cooked it in the morning and then...
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, yeah, they're goated. I love them. Buy them. They're great. They're amazing. They're good for breakfast, so if you need them. Yeah. Anywho.
Thank you so much for the call, guys. And we'll catch you next time.
Of course. Bye-bye.
Callers are great. Thank you for all these shout outs, folks.
You mean Pagoda's great?
To the sponsors, and they appreciate it. Oh. All right. Speaking of sponsors, we're going to take a quick break to talk about PrizePicks. All right. So first off, PrizePicks is sponsoring all my Worlds coverage, which is awesome. If you haven't seen yet, there's a new surprise test up on YouTube that includes Faker being confused about what year champions came out. Go take a look at it. It is really fun. I think Juan, my editor, did a really good job on it, and we wouldn't have been able to fly to Worlds in Europe to be able to make that if it wasn't for PrizePicks. Secondly, PrizePicks approached me with the idea of doing a prediction show, and we're going to do the 5th episode tonight after Hotline League. But if you've missed it, we've been putting them out before every game day, and that has been really fun. I do that with Cubby Croissant, who was the GM and coach of NRG, and then a buddy of mine named Elias who used to work on the LCS writing side and like has played PrizePicks for a long time. So if you haven't yet, please watch one of those. I think it's really fun, especially if you're interested in getting into PrizePicks but don't know where to start. We do a good job of kind of talking about some potential lineups and some fun things you can do over there. And so we'll have another one of those going up for quarters. And again, we're recording that right after the show. So if you're watching live, stick around. But if not, you can go check that out. Finally, and the really big thing is we are doing, Elias goes, I also wrote players. Yeah, nice brag. All right. The other thing that we are doing is a giveaway where you can win one of 100 free lineups, and those free lineups give you a chance to win up to $1,000 USD with PrizePicks. So please go enter into that giveaway. It's really cool. There's a bunch of different ways to enter. I think it's going to be really fun. We're going to try and give those out right before finals, so that if you end up winning a free lineup, and again, there's 100 of them that we're giving away, so I feel like it's a pretty good chance that folks can win one. Again, it just depends on how many people enter, but go sign up for that, because you have a chance to get a free lineup, and you could play that for finals, which might be kind of fun. So do want to be able to recognize that. That's just a really cool thing that they're doing, where I mean, I was like, oh, maybe we can give away a couple at some point in time during Worlds, and PrizePicks said, no, let's do 100. So go enter that giveaway. It's really easy. I mean, some of them you've probably already done, like following me on Twitch or on YouTube, or following me on Twitter. There's some PrizePicks options there too. So please go check that out, and try out PrizePicks. It's really fun. I think we've been having, I will admit, I thought the show would be fun, but I've been having a lot more fun with the show than even I expected. I think it really stands on its own. It's not something that we're doing just for the sponsor. Probably wouldn't have thought to do it before, but since I've started to do it, I've really found it to be fun companion for Worlds, as we've seen how well everyone can predict. And it's not just about predicting PrizePicks lineups. It's also about predicting what team is going to win and why. So we're going to have a good time with that. But thanks so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. Please enter the giveaway and check out the prediction show and the surprise test. Ton of content coming out because of them. So thank you. Cubby, you want to go grab the next caller?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's also a PrizePicks channel on Discord if anybody wants to join there and ask questions. Let's see. We got Shiny Froky, resub for 5 months. Thank you. Big Angry Hobo with the 76 months. Also, Big Angry Hobo is a member. Big Angry Hobo sits on both YouTube and Twitch, so thank you for that. Shiny Froky for the 77 months. Immortal Scrub for 23. And PP Doc gifted a sub to Auxcasts. I'm sure Ox will really appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. All right, we got T-Bone here. T-Bone, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Long Island, Travis.
Long Island. So we've had Washington, D.C., Long Beach, and now Long Island. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what the last conversation was. My take is that I'm fine if Team Liquid doesn't change anyone for next year, but they really should take a look at Jankos. I don't know if you guys saw, but Heretics has already signed the jungler for the new year. I don't know exactly if Jankos' contract is expired, but he's not playing for Heretics next year. And in my opinion, Jankos is, I don't really feel like it's controversial to say he's a top 3 Western player of all time. And we could see how G2 does without Jankos. They're still the best in EU, but they don't really have any creativity or anything that could kind of push them further than that. So I think that Jankos has a higher ceiling and a higher floor than Umpty. And I remember one of the reasons that TL said why they signed Umpty was that he was a Korean who could speak English. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, Jankos can speak English. So boom, he's already perfect.
All right. So Jankos should be the new jungler for Team Liquid because he can speak English. I think is the summation of your take, if I understand correctly.
Well, I would also argue that he has a higher floor and higher ceiling than Umpty, but
because he can speak English. Gotcha. Okay, so
honestly, you'd be surprised.
Have you heard Umpty speak English, by the way?
Yeah, he's like perfect. It's fluent.
Yeah. So okay. Anyway, Jankos to Team Liquid. I used to do interviews with Jankos. He joked that he would retire in North America, but I feel like now the rewards in North America are maybe not what they used to be. Ox, what do you think of this? Should we replace Umpty with Jankos? You're making some interesting expressions on camera there. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can do worse for sure. I just,
you could do worse.
you know, I feel like a lot of the G2 players from that sort of legendary G2 roster, like 2019, have such a lot of respect. But like, I think it's hard to place like what Jankos would you get if you brought him to NA? Like, you know, is he the same player he was in 2019? I mean, technically yes, but like, is he at that same level? Is he still like pushing to like? Would he come and be like, I want to win Worlds from NA, or is it like I want a paycheck? And I think that's the question: is like, what player are you going to get, and what is his motivations for coming to NA? Is what I'd be wondering about, because I think it's obvious that like out of that roster, Caps is still going hard, right? You know, on G2. We've seen, and I don't think it's like fair to say just because players from that roster are struggling at the moment, potentially because of the teams they're on also being a factor. But I don't think it's fair to say, oh, none of them are motivated or anything. But I don't know. That's the thing I'd be concerned about is like, are you getting a player who wants like a revitalization to his career? He's coming to NA because he thinks great opportunity to work with Team Liquid. He saw what went wrong for them and he's like, I can make that better. Or is it like, I can get a paycheck out of this. It's a pretty sweet deal. And sort of like going on the back of his former... Yeah, this will be a fun time. I'll see the LA lifestyle, get some money. I think I think the team has to determine that for themselves before making that decision. But that'd be my major concern. Is like, are you getting like the sunset of his career where he's just like, how much more can I milk this for at Team Liquid rather than a player? And I'm like, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not like making any assumptions. I'm just saying that's the thing I'd want to determine if I was Liquid and I was considering this pickup.
Yeah. I mean, the content of Jankos and APA on the same team in a duo would be game breaking. I will say that. So that'd be a heck of a play. I don't know if at this point I would go Jankos. I think that the one thing I would like is that at least Jankos plays to enable his laners, which I do think TL needs, and that's what Umpty's job is within the team right now. Frankly, if I were to make any replacement, and by the way, before I say this, I do want to say that I feel like Umpty would be the most likely person to be changed, but I also think that TL has the right to run it back if they want to, and if they did, I would like to see that. I think that running it back in year 2 is completely acceptable, and they were, for me, the best team domestically, even if FlyQuest outperformed them towards the end of the year. Pound for pound throughout the year, TL was the team to beat. So I will add the caveat. I think the best jungler to fit this team would unironically be Contracts. Either that or River. There it is. Yeah, either that or River. Because River, you would have, like, you can speak Korean and English, but Contracts, for me, has always been criminally underrated and is someone that I really feel like he can play carry, can also play to enable laners. I think the best compliment I've ever heard from Contracts is from Kelsey Moser, who said there's no other jungler that I'd rather have play a losing draft. Which I look at Contracts in his game, and that is very true. I really feel like Contracts plays a creative game and could really fit what TL wants to do. I think they would bring a lot of structure, and Contracts could add some creativity. Also, something I know that TL and Spawn said early on is that Umpty did bring a lot of humor to a very serious team. I don't know if that's Contracts as a person, but that does matter for behind the scenes. And it's very clear that, like, whenever I know Umpty was someone that was beloved in LCK for good reason, and he's quite beloved in TL. Like, whenever you talk to him, he's happy-go-lucky guy, does wear his heart on his sleeve, but does bring a very lighthearted nature to a team, and in a team as serious as TL, like Spawn talked about how that's really important for their environment and is good. I don't think Contracts would bring that, but I think playstyle-wise, Contracts would actually be a really good fit, so yeah.
Maybe if they pick up Contracts, they should hire like a professional clown or something as well, and just like, when Spawn's making his speeches, pie in the face just to bring the vibes up a little bit. Then you get the balance, right? You can still keep that comedic aspect.
I don't know if we have the budget for a Corchester anymore in esports talks, but I do like the idea.
When was the last year that Team Liquid did not have a boomerang? So Armeo left in 2021, right?
Wait, Armeo wasn't.
Oh, no, I don't know. I said Armeo. I meant Alfari.
Bwipo? Oh, Alfari.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking at both their names on this wiki.
Then Bwipo?
I said the wrong one. Alfari. Well,
I guess Bwipo stuck around Or it was Hans. Hans.
Yeah, Whippo stuck around. It was Hans
Yeah.
that year that boomeranged. Then you had last year. You had Summit and Piosik. So like,
Yeah.
oh wait, was there a boomerang in 2020? Who was there?
Unless you count like a belated double lift back to TSM, there was no boomerang.
Broxa, I think counts. I think Broxa
He went
counts.
CLG.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
He went CLG.
Okay, yeah, you're right. He went to CLG. Yeah. Okay, so I think it's been since 2020 that, or they've had a boomerang every year for the last 3 years. So like, I feel like it's like a Team Liquid trend. And I feel like Umpty will be the next candidate because it's not a Team Liquid year if they aren't bringing in a player from another region and then sending them back to that region at the end of it. And so I feel like we'll see goodbye to Umpty. Knowing Core and knowing Impact and knowing how much of a voice they have in the roster, I really would be surprised if Contracts ends up there. I think it's more likely you'd end up with River. I think that's if they're picking somebody who's already within the league, I think River is the candidate. But I definitely feel like there's a really good chance that they just snipe another LCK player, or
really?
tier 2 LCK. I mean, not based off anything I'm hearing, but just knowing that team. Like, I think that is like within. I think there's a reason they grabbed Umpty. I think there's a reason they grabbed Piosik and Summit last year. Like, I think Core and Impact like playing with LCK players, and I think
I know that it goes beyond LCK players. I do know that Impact and Umpty, I believe, were close beforehand. So I thought that there was like a little bit of extra motivation.
No, I'm sure
there.
that's part of it, right? But like,
yeah, Impact and Umpty have wanted to play together before.
If you were trying to, if there was some site where you could wager on stuff, I would just sort of be like, okay, who are the players that we think Core and Impact are friends with, or who like, or follow on social media or something like that within the Korean League ecosystem? Because if any of them are junglers, there's a good chance that that's who's coming through.
I don't know. I think that I did Rainer ever work with Contracts at C9? Would they have like interacted there? Because if TL keeps the majority of their staff, like that could be someone that wants it in. I think that Contracts like legitimately again would be a really good fit. Obviously,
I agree. I just don't think
yeah.
That does not feel like a.
Wait, so Cubby, can I ask you a question then? Do you think that Cubby would be, or your Cubby, whoops. Do you think that Contracts would be better than Jankos? See, you're smiling. I see you're smiling.
Oh, his stream's delayed. Hold on. Yes.
That's a hot take.
I don't think so. I think Contracts really slept on, actually. Yeah.
Dude, I don't see Jankos coming over here.
Isn't he like one of the best Western players of all time? Am I crazy?
Yes. For me, I do hold him in that regard. But is he right now? No.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing: if we're going to go off of right now, did Contracts have anything good to show in the past year? Like, no, I will agree. In 2023 Worlds, he was amazing.
His mid and top were so far down every game, man. I feel like Contracts is kind of an evil hell this year. I'm sorry.
Could that not be said about Jankos as well?
It was a scaling mid, there was a project, but I feel like the project was decent.
Dude, I have such a hard time imagining
halfway through.
I have such a hard time imagining Jankos coming over here and being like, all right, guys, I'm ready to buckle in and we're going to win Worlds with this roster. Like, I just don't, I feel like that's what we're all kind of beating around the bush on the show is like, it is really hard to imagine that person showing up here and having that mentality, and that's not even like a slight against him. It's just like players. It is very rare that you have a player play for as long as he does and come over here. I also think that repeatedly we've had like LEC players who have come over here and it's just not like worked out as well. Like, I just don't. I like the content person of me would love to have Jankos over here. He is one of my favorite people I've ever interviewed. Yeah. Getting to do content with him, getting to put him in surprise tests. Like, I hope he comes over here because guess what? We'll probably do just as well at Worlds next year as we do every year. But I'll get to interview Jankos throughout the whole year. Like, that would be awesome. But like, I just don't. I don't know. I think it's a very unlikely situation where Jankos comes over here and it's just like, what we needed was Jankos.
I feel like we're just undercutting. Like, where is Jankos going to go in EU? Like, he's not going to go to Fnatic. He's not going to go to GG.
I don't know. I don't care.
We're
talking about LCS. We're talking about Team Liquid. Do you think I give a shit about where Jankos is playing in LEC next year?
EU's year is done, man. NA's year is still going. Come on.
Like, I don't. Who cares? The question I should be asking
as a fan of Western League of Legends, I care. Travis.
We'll wind this down with a question for Aux. Aux, who should we just pick up on the LCK side? Because we're gonna pick up some jungler for Team Liquid. So who are we getting? You can be our scout.
I think Chronicler will be very upset if I say this, but Hamback from KT Challenges is really good.
Yes, based.
I also think if you're looking at LCK, I think LCK Raptor has been pretty good. They had some struggles in playoffs, but I don't think that's a big deal. I think Raptor's been actually a really solid addition, so I think either of those two. I think there's always an LCK player you can come and grab.
I hope Pombok plays in LCK, frankly. He's been so good for the last 2 years. He was a name that I was throwing around to some of the NA teams here to look at. Scout.
But why would they play him when they have storied jungler Pioshik to play? I think that's the question. Obviously KT, phenomenal summer, really great. Yeah.
Time for the next generation.
Yeah, no, I think they should just keep recycling these players. I think BDD wasn't jailed on this roster. No, definitely not.
As long as Cuz has a job, that's all I care about. Cuz needs to have a job.
How is Cuz we'll get so off topic, but how did Cuz end up on Quantum Freaks?
T-Bone, thank you so much.
It's such a crime, man. I thought that team was going to be good in spring. I know.
Thank you for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
You're sponsored by NZXT, right?
Yes.
So I've only bought 2 AIO coolers in my life, and both of them were NZXT. And I just want to say this right now from the bottom of my heart. The NZXT Kraken and Kraken Elite offer chillingly cool performance and extensive customization options for a truly personalized experience. Coming with all of your RGB needs, 240, 280, and 200 or 360 millimeter radiator sizes. They are the best coolers on the market and can fit a myriad of cases. Check them out at nzxt.com. Check out the Kraken AIOs.
Oh, it's really. Oh, he left. He left the channel.
Unreal.
Right after that, he just disconnects from the call. I just think it's really nice whenever you hear such a authentically sounding shout out and privileged opportunity from an audience member to give their honest opinion on this in non-marketing terms. All right, let's move on to the next caller. Shout out to Immortal Scrub for the 23 months. A big goal. Thank you for the Prime. If you're watching live, you can move your cursor over the screen on Twitch to see a purple crown. It'll pop up and it'll let you know if your Prime sub is free. So if you have a available Prime sub, you can send that over. It's a great way to support the channel without spending any additional money, assuming that you have a membership for Prime already, which many people do. And then over on YouTube, I do want to say, if you are not a YouTube member, I think that you should consider it if you watch a lot of my content, because you do get early access to videos, and we now also have members only videos. We've been doing this for a while. They're really fun. That's basically a thing where I ask my community for what they would like me to talk about, and they come up with a answer on that. Let me see if I can pull up which video we're doing this time. We're gonna do a video about my 18 months running Yahoo Esports. This is what people voted on, and it came out nearly ahead of why I think LA is awesome in my defense of it. So that's what you got. But you also get a back catalog of a bunch of other videos that I've done, including ranking favorite league events that I've been to, what I would do if I wasn't in League Esports, just a bunch of kind of like fun stories and experiences of my time in esports. So kind of a behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, thanks everybody for becoming a YouTube member. All right, we have zemelci here. Zemelci, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from London, United Kingdom.
London, the United Kingdom, a place where I will be in 2 weeks against my desire and wishes. What would you like to talk about on the show?
I would like to talk about the fact that although they are still relatively unfavored in the matchup, GenG is actually one of the better draws that FLYQUEST could have gotten for quarters, just for how they function as a team. And though I don't, I'm not going in being like, oh yeah, Fly are the favourites, because I think that would be delusional. I think that they actually have a better chance here than they might have in some of the other quarters draws they could have had.
Where would you rank GenG in terms of like are they a middle of the pack or I shouldn't say middle of the pack. Like if you had to rank the teams that you would want to get as a FlyQuest member, would GenG be hanging out in the middle of that list, or where
I mean,
how good of a draw is this, given the options?
So given the options is a bit of this take, because, for example, if you could have Weibo, you would always take Weibo. However, Weibo, Fly were a 3-2 team, Weibo a 3-2 team. You can't have Weibo. So when you're working from a world of your options are between GenG all the way down to top HLE, T1 top esports, I think the Fly are a team who do well when they have a clear idea of what their opponents want, in game and in draft. We see this particularly with, they really love red side, and they come up with a lot of very clear red side draft plans in terms of a thing that they want to exploit, or a matchup that they want to take, or they want to give something to Bwippo, for example. And so I think that GenG are a strong team, but they have you have a fairly clear idea of what their strengths are, partly because they have a lot of them, but also this is World's Top 8. And you're not facing the 3-2 teams. You're going to be facing a team that has a lot of strengths. And so I think it is to FlyQuest's benefit that they can go against a team where they have the best chance of going, you wanna inspired Nunu on them, but not actually with the Nunu, with something else. And so having a clear understanding of what GenG want to do, I think gives them the best chance to find a something else like that upsets GenG's rhythm. And then I think that if Fly can manage to upset GenG's rhythm, which again, low chances, this is not a likely possibility, but if they can, then I think that there's a good chance to just snowball it, snowball the series from there.
Yeah. Well, first off, Jamada's in the chat and says Aux stinks. Secondly, let's get into the take here. Cubby, how hot of a take is this on the Scoville levels, I guess?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Scoville levels, but if this were hot ones, I feel like this would be towards the end of the episode.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, I mean, my thing is that GenG have looked like nothing but a tournament favorite since they started this tournament. And I think that, if I'm going to get a little, galaxy brained with how FlyQuest could potentially win, I feel like FlyQuest, one of their strength right now is that they do have a defined style, right? And I will give FlyQuest credit. I think that FlyQuest, the way they're playing the game to bend, not break, this is the approach. This is the LS approach to the game, in my sense. I know I'm blowing it down, but I feel like a lot of the strategies that FlyQuest are running is, hey, individually, if we try and play early game or play games where we have to stomp, we cannot match what the top teams in the world can do. That's just not what our players are capable of. And to be fair, you play at a disadvantage if you try and play that way, because these players get to play on better ladders and better competition for the entirety of the year. So trying to beat them in lane, I don't think is doable. So what FlyQuest is doing is they're playing comps that can bend, not break. They're okay going down in gold. And then they're narrowing up the map enough where they are able to find fights. If they don't break, where because of the champions they're picking and the scenarios they get, they're actually able to play their way back into the game. And I do think that FlyQuest and their in-fight mechanics have been good, which have helped them do this. And I will give Fly props to this, because I feel like it has been their strategy of kind of hiding what they're playing from the tournament has been really good for them. My biggest issue is that you're giving GenG, the best team in the world, arguably, the whole week to prep when they have a lot of tape on you for the entire tournament. And I don't like FlyQuest chances from that, because I feel like at this point, when you're going up against FlyQuest, no shot Inspired gets Ivern, and no shot that Quad gets Ori. I feel like that pick should be denied too. You can take away Blippo Renekton if you want. And And any of these picks that are given over, GenG will have a game plan for. I think that the biggest things working in FlyQuest's favor is that lane swaps do guarantee that you are able to get to mid game or get to later in the game. And so you are not going to be just absolutely blasted early. But the same praise that I just gave the FlyQuest with their in-fight mechanics actually being quite good. They're going against GenG, and they're the best team in the world when it comes to that. And I do not think FlyQuest does more than take a game. I'm hoping that they make it look more competitive than what the scoreline ends up being at the end. The other thing is that sometimes GenG can get draft prios that are kind of off, but that hasn't been the way this tournament. In fact, their draft prios have kind of set the meta for the rest of the tournament, which has been interesting. I don't know what you think about that, Aux, but I think sometimes GenG can get a little bit in their head about what they play, and maybe that can help FlyQuest, but like this is me again trying to get, a little tinfoil capped on.
I think the bar is so high, and
Yeah.
I think like we saw GenG domestically, and I know everyone talks about GenG domestically, GenG international is different, but GenG domestically, and kind of I put GenG as my team to go 3-0 in what's it called in Swiss, because I just think this team, especially in the lower stakes games, are very, very consistent. They broke so many records this season, and like obviously this is a Worlds quarterfinals, but I don't think like. Top Esports, for example, I'm a big Top Esports fan. If it was Top Esports against FlyQuest, I'd be like, it's probably, Top Esports are heavily favored, but also it's well within their realms just to completely sprint it because that's just the team they are. I don't think that's a GenG thing. GenG just, I think they'll play their game, business as usual. I feel like we even saw domestically in the LCK, they would, target ban even weaker teams. They wouldn't disrespect them. And I feel like as well, when we saw teams able to beat them, particularly HLE, a big part of HLE winning was the fact that they really set the pace of the game. Delight and Peanut were like driving the game forwards and ensuring that GenG couldn't play just to... I feel like this team, everyone always praises the macro. I feel like they can sometimes be a bit greedy, and it's not like necessarily like a bad thing, but, they can kind of separate Canyon and Lehens at times. They can defend on their weak side while also Canyon's on the other side stealing away camps. And you kind of get this situation a lot where you'll get to like 15, 20 minutes and everyone has a farm lead on GenG. It feels like nothing really significant happened, but everyone is ahead. And I just think if you don't really push them, they will just do that to you. And they have phenomenal team fighters across the board. All three laners great in team fights. Canyon and Lehens obviously also fantastic, but I just think the bar is really hard with this team, and so many teams just get like player checked. It's like, is your mid laner good enough to not get Goomba stomped in lane by Chovy? And there's not many mid laners who can consistently like for a lot of teams, just surviving against Chovy is like step one. Okay, our mid laner just survives against Chovy and doesn't end up super far behind. Then we have to like factor in other there's so many, I think, things you have to do right to beat GenG, even in a single game. I think a series just seems... Whereas, a team like maybe Top Esports, the series would look more brutal, but I genuinely believe Top Esports are a team who can just, at any point, they could just run it. And I feel like you'd rather have a team who could just randomly decide to sprint it. And I think, I don't think GenG are that team.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I? So I get where you're coming from with that, Orcs, and as a Tez fan, like I accept that Jackie Love will occasionally show up and forget that he's playing League of Legends, but at the same time, I think that part of my opinion on this is that, especially when you're picking about a team that you want to take, I don't think that if you're in a situation where you're reliant on, maybe the team forgets to show up, you're already kind of in a doomed position. And, we've seen this consistently over the years, where, NRG versus Weibo last year was maybe, Weibo will forget to show up and, the Shy won't. And then, we all know how that ended, breaking my heart. But, so, I think that, when you get to that point, you're, these are going to be hard matchups anyway. Like I said, I don't think that, Fly are favored in this matchup. But I think that, when you compare to, for example, LNG or even Tez, I think that it's much... partly because of their variants, it's harder for FlyQuest to have a clearer idea as to what exactly a team like that might bring into a best of 5. Whereas I think that if you're talking about the 5% shot odds for them to win the series, then I think that the fact that GenG have this style and FlyQuest can go, okay, well, they know about our Ivan, they know about these things, but we have I don't know, this thing or this draft idea, and maybe we can break GenG with that. I think that's why I give them the odds here.
I respect take, but I just think I don't see it, man. I feel like it's been such a marathon this LCK summer for teams even to try. I mean, KT did it. Who knows how? But for teams to even just take games of GenG, I think it's such a hard sell for FlyQuest to do it. And the point is valid that being in a position where you're hoping that a team just doesn't show up to win never feels good. But I think when you're going up for a team to get an upset of this magnitude, you kind of need the other roster to be playing down a little bit in terms of level. Yeah. I think it's even the G2 BLG, going into the G2 BLG series, I said based on the play so far, G2 look like favorites. Based on purely the play in this tournament, G2 are playing better. Yeah. But if BLG played even 60% of their domestic form, it's a wash. And that's the thing, you kind of need them. And even then, BLG ended up winning the series, right? I feel like you need, especially the top teams from the LCK and LPL. I think with teams like Weibo and D+, I don't even want to say. But with the top teams, I feel like you need them to be off their game to be knocked down. And I think it's an interesting point that you think that FlyQuest could shake GenG. And I think that if we were to see that, it could definitely get them a game. But I think a series, a full best of 5 is a hard ask.
I mean, the one thing I'd say to that is I think if they can take a game, in terms of shaking them, it's GenG at International, and that's gonna be in the back of their heads. And it's GenG who lost Summer Finals. And so I think that, again, unlikely, not impossible.
Ox, if you had to say, if FlyQuest beats GenG, is that a top 10 worlds or all esports ever history upset? Is it a top 5,
it's
top 3, top 1?
It's top 3 or top 1.
Top 3. What would be higher? Maybe to be fair, it's a best of 5 as well. Even the Albus Nox.
Was
Tigers.
That one. I was thinking about Kaboom.
Those are also best of 1s. To do so in a best of 5.
I think the only thing even in the same ballpark is
C9 Africa.
No, C9 was favored.
TL.
I think the only thing in the same ballpark is kind of DRX 2022, and I don't even think that comes close. I think that's the only thing where it's that was a series of, them against GenG was a big upset, but that I think this is even further apart than that, and that's crazy to say. So I think this might be number 1 if this happens, number 1 upset. So you'd be
What about G2 RNG 2017 is actually
if we're talking internationals, the TL the TL IG series, I still am amazed that that's a real thing.
The G2 RNG 2017 is a good candidate, and I would put this above that. But that's actually a very good candidate. And we're saying worlds only, by the way.
If it's worlds only, then I think it's my first.
You're saying overall? I'd say top 3. I'd say TLIG, G2 RNG, and probably this. But I would put this number 1 out of all those. I would. And that's credit to GenG. I'm not discounting FlyQuest for that. This GenG team's legit. Maybe if FlyQuest finds just the most ridiculous answer into those Nocturne Aurora core that GenG keeps on running, maybe. But then again, it's a best of 5, right? How many drafts does GenG have they're effective at? It's just ridiculous. Yeah. So I really don't know what kind of approach. I'd say the one thing that I want to see is I want to see FlyQuest deny Rumble from Keen. I think the Rumble has been really big from GenG. I know they have the Aurora too, but I feel like taking those 2 champs away and the Blippo champ pool should deal a little bit better with Aurora than Rumble for me. But yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, Zemelci. Anything you want to call out?
So shout out the sponsors as always, particularly NZXT, who are actually available in the UK. I've been thinking about getting a new monitor for a while, and when I do, it will be through NZXT because of their support of the show, and hopefully Travis 5 will work on the UK website, but we'll find out. Also, shout out HRT, that shit's great. And then finally, shout out Chronicler's Discord, which Orcs is a member of, and I was asked to shout out the multiple various cats in there, so Malcolm, Percy, come join, we have a pet channel, we have many other cool things. That's all.
You're treading some dangerous water here, I'll say.
I was given a sleeper phrase to say, and on my status as a mod here, I will not be saying it.
All right. I'll catch you later.
Have a good evening.
All right. We have 2 more callers, but I think first, since we did just get the shout out for NZXT, it's fine. It's time for our final conversation around sponsorship stuff, which is NZXT. Thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring the show. They have a sale that is running right now over on, you can get a gaming gear bundle on their site through the 31st of December. So the next couple months, they've got this thing going. Keyboard and mouse, you can save up to 42% off of a combo of the two. And they also have various other ones, audio bundles up to 55%. Some really cool stuff happening over there in terms of accessories. But also, they just got some really great deals across the board. So go check out NZXT. We've got the link in the description, also a link in the chat if you're watching right now. If you're watching later, you can always use the podcast or YouTube description. And when you do check out, use code Travis5, which Zemelci just referenced. She was saying that because you can save 5% using code Travis5, and it stacks with deals, usually. Most of the time, always. I think as far as I know, it's always done it. I should be careful with that because I believe it's always happened. There's no guarantee it'll always happen, but I think it will always happen. And that's code Travis5. You'll save 5% off your NZXT purchase. And again, I know some of you like to just build your own computers. And so it's not just a situation where, oh yeah, you go over there, you buy a pre-built PC. If you want to just buy your own computer, our earlier caller did a great job of shouting out some of their accessories or PC components, I should say, like their fans and CPU coolers and all those types of things. So please check out NZXT. They're a great sponsor of the show. We really appreciate them. And currently they're on for a year, which we really love. So it's really cool to see that. Thanks, NZXT, for sponsoring the show. All right, Cubby, you want to go grab our next caller?
Yeah.
Shout out to Matei for 22 months, even if he has a terrible take about London and LA. Jay Bomsky, thank you for the tier 1. PP Doc gifted a sub to Ixbix. Shout out to Ixbix. Didn't know Ixbix was here. Hopefully Ixbix is here and they noticed that that PP Doc was able to gift that to them, but really appreciate the support. Thanks everybody for subbing. It's that time of the year where subs do tend to dip. I think you usually get a ton in the beginning of the year, but we're down a ton on subs, and it's just like this time of year. You usually get less in my experience. So thanks to everybody who is subbing. It is really appreciated. QuiQue is here. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's QuiQue.
QuiQue?
Yeah, QuiQue.
Oh, I just noticed the E. I'm sorry. QuiQue,
Yeah,
where are you calling from?
I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Dallas,
Yeah.
Texas. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I think my take a little hot, but not having any NA versus EU games at Worlds is not an issue. The issue is not having any international tournaments for just NA versus EU.
So you're a little quiet if you can get a little closer to your microphone.
Can you hear me now? Is
Yes.
that better?
It's a little bit better. I think just, speak up as you can.
Okay. So basically, like MSI is just it's a worst Worlds. And then next year when we have our third international tournament, it's just one team from every region, which is also not as good as Worlds. So if we had like just a tournament for NA versus EU, I know like Rift Rivals was a thing forever ago, but I mean it wasn't that good of a tournament. And if we had more teams and just a better atmosphere, I feel like that would get us that desire for NA versus EU.
So you're saying you want more international events, or you want them to feel more like Worlds?
I want MSI. I mean, MSI can stay how it is, but I want at least one tournament that is NA versus EU only.
So you want
and
Rift
nothing
Rivals?
else.
So Rift Rivals.
Yes, but better. I swear, the old Rift Rivals was not good. It was not a good tournament. It was kind of seen as a joke and like for fun. But I feel like if we made it more serious, I think it would be a better tournament.
How would you do that?
The way I'll do it is probably have like 3 teams from each region go, maybe 4 if we want to. Maybe have some tie-ins to Worlds the same way as they do for MSI, where we kind of take away one team. I feel like doing that kind of gives us that that rivalry, but we already like it's just naturally there. Like we see these 2 regions always communicate with each other. You know, you have streamers from both regions always talking to each other and seeing who's better. There's always fights for like who's better, G2 or TL. And we saw the scrims results, and everyone's talking about, oh, these scrim results don't matter, or they do matter. You know, so I feel like that already is naturally there. But if we can have more of that in just a single tournament, and then we don't have to worry about it at Worlds, where we're trying to find the best teams, you know?
Just to be clear, Rift Rivals was 3 teams from each whenever it ran. So,
yep.
Was it?
Yes.
I feel like when the first Rift Rivals came out, it just felt like it wasn't serious. It was just like for fun, you know? It just
I think 2017, to your point, only had Phoenix 1 versus G2. But in 2018 and 2019, they had 3 teams from each region. So, yeah.
I just think that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I just want to say, like, I just feel like now it just feels like that. I don't know. I just feel like that rivalry is even stronger than it was before. That's how I feel about it. Like, you always see it, and like even what we saw today when there was no NA versus EU teams going against each other, everyone was like frustrated because we don't really know, quote unquote, who the best Western team is. You know, people are frustrated that G2 didn't get to go against any Western teams from NA. You know.
So a couple things. One, I don't think it is a flaw of the. I agree with you that it's not a flaw of this tournament's format that EU and NA did not play. I think it would be really weird to try to like force or orchestrate that somehow through stuff. I mean, I guess you could just always seed some sort of thing in the beginning where it's EU and NA for funsies, but I don't know if that makes like a better format. Perhaps if you're measuring only based off of entertainment value. I do agree with you that it is like incredibly disappointing that we did not get a matchup because of the fact that it does feel like the rivalry is in a really good place. Yeah.
The caller said it's not that big of a deal, you know.
Well, the caller was saying that it's not that big of a deal that we did not get it here because of the fact that like it should have happened elsewhere in the calendar. But then the caller, to my understanding, is one more time on your name?
It's QuiQue. Like QuiQue, yeah.
QuiQue, you are saying that it is disappointing that we didn't see like the sort of final showdown between EU and NA at some point in time, right?
Yeah, if there was a place for that actually happen, it would be interesting. But I don't think Worlds is the place for that. We're trying to find the best team, or the best teams face each other. And if we lumped in this NA versus EU into Worlds, it just makes it not as interesting, or not as, I would say, it doesn't feel right. It just feels like that's not what Worlds is about. Worlds is about finding the best teams and having them face each other.
Yeah, it's a sub-story of Worlds, I would argue, right? Like, I'm not saying I agree with you that the main goal is like who's the best team in the world, but also
for Western Twitter, yes, it's a nice subplot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, who wants this? I'm tired of seeing Western teams get Goomba stomped by Eastern teams. It just isn't interesting. You know?
Is it? Did Aux start Goomba stomping in this episode? And I'm picking up. I've heard this phrase twice in my life, and both have been in the last 20 minutes.
Really?
That's coincidence.
It's a good phrase.
It is.
I know what it is, but it's funny that I'm hearing it outside of the context of Mario.
I will necro a tweet, or not a tweet, a take that I had on the show previously when we were talking about the new format with the 3 international tournaments going on. I wanted for the FLYQUEST draft tournament, so the one that would be after the first split or winter split, for there to be two different tournaments that were more regionalized with NA and EU. I feel like NA, EU, and then the Pacific, like APAC, LPL, LCK. I actually feel like that would be the right time to have a tournament like this, and it could have impact on tournaments later on. But like for me, the new international event after the winter split, just having 5 teams play a fearless draft format is not an appealing tournament format.
I don't know why they did that, dude. Like, I get
lame.
that it's like,
it's so lame.
Oh, we send 1 team, and then we send 2 teams, and then we send 3 to 4 teams. But like, I'm like, that would have been a really good place to have an EU versus an A, and like,
I'll be honest, I don't want to win NA winter split. I'll be real. I feel like it's so detrimental to your schedule for the rest of the year, and that tournament just doesn't really matter. So for me, that is where I would put in you have a tournament that runs simultaneously or back to back, and you regionalize it. So yeah, I feel like that would be a fun time to actually drum up rivalries in a fearless draft format, which would just like that for me spells out a lot of fun. Yeah. Whereas sending a team from each region where like 2 or 3 of the regions are likely to get Goomba stomped by the Eastern teams at the tournament does not seem very fun. And you're going to get matchups that are going to repeat that may not be entertaining at all. So, yeah.
Also, it's going to be like a short tournament.
Yes.
It's going to kind of be in the middle of things. It's going to have to, like, one team is going to get absolutely nuked by, like, the time zone change. You know,
Yes.
Wherever it's hosted, it's like you could get completely jet lagged, and then maybe you get knocked out within, like, 2 or 3 days. You have to fly back. I just feel like if you kept it, like, you can keep it in the same time zone, because if it was EUNA, well, not the same time zone, but, like, a lot closer. And then, obviously, the Asian time zone would just be a simple solution. I don't know. I think that would make more sense if you had.
I don't know why they didn't just
guaranteed. Yeah,
I just don't know why they. I guess the challenge for them is, what do you do with the 5th region? Because there will be a 5th region next year, right? Like, that's essentially what they're doing. Is they're having this other region. I guess I'm trying to remember. I guess they're just calling it APAC or whatever. I forget what they're calling it, but
there's a name.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll find it.
Oh, LCP in the chat. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess that's the challenge, is you have to figure out what to do with this region. But I think you could throw them into you just do an East and West tournament, and you just have the East, and they're part of the East side.
The thing is as well, if you split the tournaments, you could potentially have more teams in each one. And then the top team from the LCP might be competitive with like the 3rd team from like the LPL. I think the problem as well, like this is an issue we had at MSI already, is when we had one team at MSI, is you're sending like the best LCK team, and then it's like I feel like teams who are like number 1 seed in NA and EU can be competitive against like 3rd seed. Or maybe definitely 4th seed, but 3rd seed, I feel like has like sort of. I could see G2 beating D+ did not look that good, but I think that's like a realistic thing. But like when you send them to MSI and you're like, we have the strongest team right now in the LPL LCK, it was just always such a tough ask. And I think that's going to be the problem with this tournament as well. I know it's going to be a short split before, so maybe we don't get like the true best, but you're presumably going to send like one of the strongest performing teams, and you're just going to get, it's going to be brutal, Yep. I think the part of the reason MSI has worked better is by introducing the extra teams
secondary
from those
teams.
regions.
Yes.
Yeah, there's more upset potential.
Yes. I like your hope for the winter split tournament is that like the LPL team like loses their goddamn minds because it's fearless format the way they did at the start of summer again. Like, and that's like the only way that the tournament's interesting, right? If a team that's supposed to be really good comes in and just does not perform, which for me it does not make for an interesting tournament no matter what. So yeah, 100%.
All right. Looks like, Kike, we mostly agree with your take here. Anything that you would add before I give you your shout out?
Yeah, the one thing I would add was that for me, I've never been to an international tournament, and it would be really great if this was, the opportunity, because you could split it, 1 year, North America, next year EU, and then there'd be more opportunity for us as fans to actually go see these tournaments. That's all I would like to say.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you look at what they did with the LEC Swiss, or the LEC studio for Swiss, it doesn't seem like getting fans to watch tournaments in person is a big priority for them these days, which is a bit of a heartbreak.
Yes, you're right.
But Yeah, thanks for the call, and we'll catch you next. Oh, wait, sorry, you have shout-outs?
No shout-outs. Just thank you for having me. It was a really enjoyable conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, we have one final caller to go, and then we'll be rolling into our prediction show right after this as we say goodbye to Aux. Off Cubby goes. Thank you to Element for the 5 gifted. Good to see you, Element. Hope you're doing well. I think it's very late your time when you sent that. Oh, don't know if you're still here. You fell asleep, but thank you for the support as always. Hope you're doing well. Asher is here. Asher, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Tempe, Arizona.
Tempe, Arizona. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I'm a huge believer in off meta. I think that it's a super big defining factor of competitive and pro play in general. So my take is that Nunu jungle and Kled mid are not only necessary for a healthy meta in competitive play, but they should be encouraged for the viewership factor.
When you spit it that way, it makes it sound like you feel like we need Nunu and like
so Fearless
like in every meta. Like,
yeah, you want Fearless.
I mean, I think that it just has such a value of throwing people off. Like people cite the teleport cancel
decisions like that, like the ability to sneak in off meta picks is important. You're not saying specifically Nunu and Kled.
Yes, to clarify. Okay. I mean, you think about off meta in 2022 Worlds, like Barrel's Heimer support really shaped the meta, especially towards finals. And people cite the Bard pick in Game 5, but I didn't really see it do that much, so I'm not sure. But even I think back to early League where we had like Shyvana played by Moscow 5 that was a huge shake up and ended up making them win a lot of games. The first Worlds, even if it doesn't super count, would be like, the Shushei Alistar that carried them through a lot of the tournament. I think that off meta is just so underrated. I think that it's really important to both aspects of pro play.
Yeah. Ox, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think that teams are often reluctant because they will spend so much time practicing a champion to try and get to be competent matchups, understand how to play with it. And if they invest all the time into like a off-meta pick and it just gets banned after the first time they use it, or if, it's not as effective as it can, they feel like it's wasted time. But I mean, I always think back to the 2016 series, the MF support, because I was playing at the time. Yeah. And they developed it. So at the time, Zyra was like so strong. I remember I was playing, Zyra was like dominant in all scrims. And then this MF pick came out and it was so smart. The fact of how a passive interacted with the plants, the combo with Ashe, and, we were trialing for next year, and immediately every scrim had MF. I was picking up MF, everyone was picking up MF. It was meta-defining. Yeah. And they saved it until, the series against the best team in the world and nearly took them down with it. And I feel like a lot of that has been lost because, teams just aren't willing to invest the time or, bring out these. I think it's really cool that they have been brought out. And also, I don't know how much of it is based on public perception, where you put this time in this pick, you bring it out, and then if it doesn't work, you get clowned on. I really hope that teams aren't averse. I'm not saying they are. I hope they're not averse to it because of that. Because people have been flaming the Kled mid. You got to bear in mind, right? You let the other team have Yone, right, which is a huge pick, but you get it by not banning that. You can ban something else. You get a draft advantage. Even if your Kled counter is let's say it works 6 out of 10 times. You've scrimmed, and Kled usually works, but it's not that good. Considering how strong Yone is, that's still advantageous. And just because the game bombs, things can go wrong in a game. People see one example of it, and they're like, oh, Kled sucks. It's if they practice it, if they believe in the theory, they should bring it out, and they shouldn't care if people clown on it. Because imagine if the Nunu had completely bombed. People are like, oh, it's so stupid, it's so bad, it makes no sense. And it's results-based analysis. People see an off-meta pick. Yeah. It doesn't work, oh, that's so stupid. It's I think teams should dive into these strategies, and especially for big matches, finals, or when you're going into a Swiss, when you're playing against teams from a different region, when you have opportunities to scrim so many different regions, so you can potentially hide your picks from specific ones. We saw that clearly HLE didn't understand
it was
the Nunu,
so funny,
man. Some of the members.
It was so funny.
I think teams should do that, and I think Fearless is trying to push the teams to do that when they otherwise wouldn't. But I think it's just kind of bad from some of the teams who don't push themselves to think a bit more off meta. And also, it's kind of I think a good example would be meta is so fluid But like just by thinking, I think T1 last year when they won Worlds, they were like, hey, because at the time everyone was like, oh, Alistar's so strong, and they're like, dude, Renata's so strong. Like, how can you play into Renata as Alistar? And people would pick Renata, and then people would pick Alistar into it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they're like, oh my god, it's
my
unplayable. And it's like,
Yeah.
no shit. And it's like T1 were like, hey, maybe we don't do that. And it's like the meta shifts completely, but it's like that is just thinking, not just following the rules that the other teams have been setting. And that's like a really basic one, but like I think teams are just so often like slaves to the meta and just like, oh, you know, this is strong, this is tier listing. I completely agree. I think it's so much better, and teams really should be pushing for some of these. And it doesn't have to be crazy, but like the amount of players we have who have had so much experience in the game and have played so many different picks, it doesn't have to be as out there as Nunu or Cled to be a bit off meta, and we're just not seeing it brought out.
I mean,
And I think a good example of that was the Galio top too, to counter the Rumble.
Yep.
That was like, it was like meta adjacent, but it worked pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, that's really, like, we've seen a lot less Rumble prio now that pick's emerged in the tournament. I think that's actually a good call. Yeah, I mean, I always like to talk about experience gap, right? I was talking about it with APA's pool, and like how many of these mid laners have been playing the Orianna Syndra matchup for like 10 plus years, right? I know Syndra got some changes, but still, I mean, relatively the same with cooldowns changed, right? It's really tough to beat that if you're a newer player. And if you're going against teams that are perceived and are better, it's like, if you're going to play into them something that they see consistently throughout their year, I feel like you're diminishing your chances to win the game. Like, if you realize that you aren't the better team, sometimes you have to do trickery in order to win. Sometimes you are the better team, by the way. Trickery works really well. A great example, if we're going to watch football, like the Detroit Lions just absolutely shat and styled on the Cowboys this past week, running a lot of trick plays the Cowboys had no idea how to deal with.
Yeah, I mean,
something that, you know, is with other games too.
I would almost push on it this way, Cubby, because I get kind of annoyed when people are like, oh, don't these LCS teams know that they can't win against LCK by playing the right way because they're a worse team? Like, they have to do something stupid. I'm like, look, if you could pull out a
they don't have
pick
to, but
in draft that the other team is unable to deal with or catch them off guard, then you are the better team in that moment. Like, if you beat them with that, then like for that game, you were the better team because you made the better decision. You made the better call. Like, you played better by draft. Like, draft is part of the play. So
yeah,
I get annoyed at this idea that like I'd rather it be, hey, become the better team by getting better at drafting or by having off meta stuff or like being innovative instead of people being like, oh, you have to cheese them because you're not as good. You know, it somewhat implies that like, well, by bringing out something that's off meta or catching them off guard, then like you're the worst team, but you're winning, you know, because of that. And it's like, no, like nobody sits around and goes, oh, that team drafted better, but they're worse, but they just drafted better. You know, it's just, I think it's cheesy to say that stuff. Like, I think it's like, if you draft better, then guess what? You were the better
it's
team.
part of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when level 1 strategies were called like cheese. Like, if you did something level 1 to get an advantage, that was cheesy, and it's like, oh, you're just not the better team. Like, and now there is teams who have like practiced level 1 strategies specifically and will get great value out of it. And I just think it's all part of the game. You know, I think cheese is a term that we use to kind of diminish, but I think it's thinking creatively. And at the end of the day, the goal is kill the Nexus. Doesn't matter as long as you don't cheat. Doesn't matter what you do to get there. If you win on the day, then you were the better team. It's that simple.
If somehow there existed a theoretical world where a team was constantly able to bring out new picks every game and catch their opponent off guard every single time, and like they had worse hands, but they ended up winning worlds with that, I don't think it would make sense for people to be like, damn, this shitty team won. And they did it only because they picked weird shit every game and were able to win with it. You know, like it's just it's such a goofy
that'd be a base timeline, honestly.
I mean, as someone that, you know, covered a Fearless Draft League this past split, we actually had a lot of new players. Like, I mean, I got shit at the start when I said I think the FlyQuest draft is good on Twitter because I actually saw a lot of new, and I did think the FlyQuest draft was good. And then guess what? They ended up winning, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's Gigabrain!" Like, the results based. It does feed into like what Aux said about being scared to bring out picks. Like, did the Clyde go the way that TL wanted to? No. Do I respect APA for playing the pick? Absolutely. Nunu is a pick that, like, I know for a fact pros are scared to play. And it was brought up on Twitter that Inspired, like, I mean, this is a common pick in NA. Like, legitimately, if you guys want to know about scrim culture, it's pretty common that, like, Nunu gets played at the end of scrims. Like, Nunu, at least in NACL with Fearless, and also in LCS, like, I mean, I know there are teams that have existed throughout time where if a team is up 4-0 and going into the last game of a scrim, they will troll pick, or they will not ban and pick whatever they want, and Nunu will come out. And a lot of the times, like, Nunu is a champ that actually has real value. And I mean, the kit's insane. Like, the way they used it was like to be the pseudo enchantress for Olaf. But the engage range you have, your clear speed, your ability to secure objectives, like, this champ has legitimate strengths to its kit that not a lot of other champs have in the game. But a lot of people are just scared to play it because, oh no, like, if I play this and lose, I look like shit. Because if you start running it down on Nunu, well, you are legitimately running it down on Nunu, right? So again, I respect the fact that Inspired is a very talented player and has the balls to play a pick where a lot of people look at it as like, oh, this is a champion that doesn't have a ton of intrinsic skill and shouldn't exist in pro. Guess what? They made it fucking work in pro. That's part of the fun of the game. So yeah. I really appreciate the fact that FlyQuest, like, I as much as we've given praise to the TL staff throughout this Worlds, I think the FlyQuest staff deserves a lot of credit as well with how they've worked with the team. It's clear that whatever they're doing, like hiding strats from some of the other teams, has been big. But also, I mean, I remember, like, I hated how Nuke Duck drafted with 100 Thieves. Mythy got a ton of shit for how he drafted with C9. Their drafts have been legitimately good. Sometimes it's the players and not the coaches behind the scenes, but the way that these guys have been working just as a core and as a team with staff and players, it's been effective, and it's given FlyQuest edge. And regardless how you find that, whether it's level ones, whether it's drafts, whether it's whatever, like, the game is the game, right? It's about whatever edge you can find anywhere. So I really appreciate it, actually.
Asher, thanks so much for the call. So we're gonna have we're kind of over time, so I need to move on. But anything you want to say here at the end?
I think I'd just like to add that, a lot of these picks, like you were saying, just add a lot of value as counter picks. And I think that's especially strong against players that I've seen, like, I don't know about overhyped, but greatly hyped, like Chovy and such. If they don't know how to deal with a matchup, it really throws them off their game. So even with that experience, it can really be like a game changer for teams. I think that's really cool. And I gave FlyQuest like a 20% chance of taking at least a game off of GenG. So that was kind of like my hot take personally. But yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to add.
Any shout-outs?
Oh yeah, so a couple things. I want to shout out Saigon Buffalo. I think it was the 2022 Worlds. They played Vayne top, Zach mid. It was super fun to watch. I think that really added to the fun factor. I also want to shout out the NACL and the Collegiate League of Legends scene. I'm currently playing collegiately for Arizona State University. And I have a lot of fun pocket picks like Zach support and stuff I like to play that's fun. So I'm a huge proponent of off meta. So nice. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, that is the show. Thank you so much, Aux, for coming on. It's really nice to have you on, and we've been so lucky to have a group of guests over the course of the last couple of weeks for Worlds that are bringing in sorely needed international perspectives as we do this stuff. But we'll go around and do a bunch of shout outs here. Cubby, what do you want to plug?
Shout out to Aux. He's always been a killing caster, and I really always appreciate him. So thanks for coming on. Shout out to the team I've been helping out behind the scenes, Supernova Dark Matter. We won our first competitive match. I'm like a tertiary coach, so I just kind of hop in when we have time. Like, they had scrims, I wasn't able to help them today. But we have a couple players that are like in high school or college that are really young too. Just literally play their first competitive matches on stage. But some of the guys are actually really talented, and they've been a great team to work with. And shout out to TL and FlyQuest for repping NA really well on the international stage. Both teams worked their ass off this year. I'm glad that they showed what they did on the stage. I think the fact that TL didn't make expectations really speaks to the year that they had, and I think they should really hold their heads high. And for FlyQuest, best of luck this upcoming week. Whatever happens, but I think they've been a great team at the tournament, and I hope they give GenG hell.
Ox, how about you? What shout-outs, plugs do you want to have?
I am going to shout out my fiance because I ruined her sleep schedule, and then I agreed to do the show, which obviously woke her up early. And then this is actually our bedroom, like right there. And, she woke up like an hour and a half ago. And I mean, I think she could have just come out, right? She could have been on camera, but she's patiently waited for the show to be over. So shout out for her and her incredible patience for me. And
I'm
also,
sorry
obviously,
that we've gone over then.
it's okay. And also, obviously, Pagoda egg rolls. I wish that I could have had some to eat today. So I feel like really that's my main criticism for the show is that me not having one as a guest kind of hurts. I felt really left out. So that might be something you want to work on because they looked pretty good. So
Thank you.
shout out
Yes,
Pagoda egg rolls.
they are very good. I have yet to figure out how to get them to Korea or Europe in the course of a case of Jamada last week, but we'll figure something out in the future. Probably not,
Nice.
but I like the idea that maybe I could. No, thanks for coming on. For me, shout outs to MagicCon. I'll be at MagicCon next week in Vegas. So Hotline League still regular time, but I'll be headed over there on like Wednesday or Thursday, I think. And that'll be a good time. So if you're at MagicCon, please say hi if you see me. Maybe we're going to play some Commander or do an event or something together. Other than that, please stick around for the prediction show. It's been really fun doing those. And I am excited to do this one and have some fun with some friends on that. So thanks, everyone. We will see you next Monday at the regular time to talk about Worlds semis after quarters are done. We'll be talking about whoever FlyQuest pulls. All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.